in returning the remains of all the hostages no longer living, drawing sharp criticism and warnings from both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now, following the initial return of 4 bodies on Monday, overnight a second convoy of 4 coffins crossed into Israel and was taken to the Abu Kabir National Center of Forensic Medicine for identification. This morning, 3 of the 4 were confirmed. Uriel Baruch, 35, from Giv'on, IDF soldier Tamir Nimradi, 20, from Nirit, and Eitan Levy of Bat Yam. A security official confirmed that the 4th body returned to Israel last night did not belong to a hostage, but was a member of Hamas. Now, with these returns, 7 hostages' bodies have now come home since the deal took effect. According to Israeli officials and the families, 21 bodies are still to be brought back. Hamas has reportedly told mediators that it will return 4 more bodies later today. Now, these latest identifications follows Tuesday's confirmations of the 4 others returned earlier. Guy Eluz, 26, a sound technician, was seized at the Nova Festival. Bipin Joshi, 24, a Nepalese agricultural student taken from Kibbutz Alumim. Yossi Sharabi, 53, of Kibbutz Berry. And Captain Daniel Perez, 22, an Armored Corps officer who was killed in fighting near Nachal Oz. All now are on their way to a proper burial. The families of the remaining hostages say that the timetable being dictated by Hamas is unbearable and that the agreement must be honored in full.
Right now, there is a violation of the agreement. 48 hostages have not been brought back, and we demand of the Israeli government, and we demand of everybody involved, especially the US and the Arab countries that vouch this agreement, we demand them to take action.
You can see vigils are continuing still at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square and also outside the Abu Kabir facility, with the participants demanding the immediate return of all the hostages. Officials do caution that the next phase will be slower and messier, with complex searches amid the rubble of Gaza, but the promise remains the same: bring every one of Israel's hostages home. And back in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump warned Hamas to carry out its obligations under the agreement or face the consequences. Trump said, if Hamas does not uphold its vow to disarm, we will disarm them, perhaps violently. The U.S. president saying the job is not done on the ceasefire deal, as the dead have not been returned, and he claimed that Hamas has misrepresented the number of bodies it's able to retrieve. Trump also said yesterday that Hamas told his top aides that it will disarm, and the terror group would be dealt with violently if he refused to do so. He also pressed the Palestinian terror group to follow through with the release of all the dead hostages being held in the Strip. Prime Minister Netanyahu also weighing in, telling the U.S. channel CBS TV that as Hamas does not fulfill all of its commitments that it agreed to, including disarming and the demilitarization of Gaza, then all hell will break loose. This, of course, referring back to President Trump's comments.
On Gaza, how long will it take Hamas to disarm, and can you guarantee that is going to happen?
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
How will you do that?
I don't have to explain that to you. But if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. They know I'm not playing games. Okay? Now, we did something monumental. We got the hostages back. That was the first thing we had to do. Above all else, get the hostages back. Now, they misrepresented because we were told they had 26, 24 of dead hostages, if we can use those terms. And it seems as though they don't have that because...
And President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, as I said, also weighing in an interview with CBS TV, stating that unless Hamas agrees to the demilitarization of Gaza, then all hell will break loose, of course referring to President Trump's comments.
Mr. Trump says the war is over, but clearly the war is not over. The IDF is deployed to sections of Gaza still, and Hamas is still on the streets of Gaza. How can you say the war is over?
Well, we agreed to give peace a chance. We agreed that we should, the conditions in his 20-point plan are very clear. It's not only that we get the hostages out without getting our military out, but that we would subsequently have both demilitarization and disarmament. They're not the same thing. First, Hamas has to give up its arms. And second, you want to make sure that there are no weapons factories inside Gaza. There's no smuggling of weapons into Gaza. That's demilitarization. We agreed that that's part of the plan. And we also agreed, okay, let's get the first part done. And now let's give a chance to do the second part peacefully, which is my hope. But if not, I think I heard the president speak tonight. He said, listen, they better do it, or, how can I speak for him? He said, all hell breaks loose. Okay. Well, I hope it doesn't.
Again, that from CBS TV. Meanwhile, the 20 freed hostages reunited with their families on Monday have now spent 2 days back in Israel after the tears, cheers, and hugs after 2 more years, spending 2 years in Hamas captivity. Now, the last 20 living hostages were released by Hamas to Red Cross teams, then transferred to Israeli military control, and then to hospitals for periods of rehabilitation, there meeting their immediate family members and close friends. The released captives are beginning medical and psychological rehabilitation as the nation celebrates their return and the ceasefire deal moves forward. Now, among the many touching moments, Guy Gilboa Dalal, greeted by his family in matching T-shirts printed, "Guy is home, the heart is whole again." This while his father was wrapped in an Israeli flag. Other reunions included Avinat Tanor with his girlfriend and former hostage Noah Argamani, and Omri Miran speaking to his young daughters via a video call before embracing them in person. Prime Minister Netanyahu and his wife Sarah visited the released hostages at Ichalav Hospital. Let's take a look.
בצאת החג באתי עם רעייתי שרה לבית החולים לפגוש את הבנים היקרים שחזרו הביתה. במהלך השנתיים האלה, רעייתי ואני נפגשנו עם המשפחות שלהם פעמים רבות. בכינו איתם, חיבקנו אותם, והבטחתי להם, אנחנו נחזיר אותם. ולא היה יום שלא קיבלתי דיווחים על מצבם, מה שידענו, מה שביקשתי לדעת. הבטחתי להחזיר אותם, והחזרנו אותם. ועכשיו, אחרי שהם מחובקים על ידי משפחותיהם, גם אנחנו נחבק אותם.
And while Israel observes the ceasefire, Hamas gunmen have launched a bloody crackdown in Gaza, executing dozens of their own people on the streets. Now, the documented public executions come as Hamas tries to reassert control over the Strip. The IDF decimated the organized Hamas military formations, but its armed gunmen have surfaced on those streets. 33 Gazans have reportedly been murdered by Hamas since the ceasefire began, Hamas targeting alleged collaborators or members of rival factions who were challenging their grip on power. Social media videos show that masked Hamas fighters forcing men to kneel in the streets before opening fire with machine guns as crowds chant Allah Akbar. Footage also shows Hamas gunmen deploying in southern Gaza, including members of the group's elite shadow unit, which held Israeli hostages during the war. Now, the brutal killings underscores the danger of allowing Hamas to retain power in post-war Gaza. Israel and the U.S. have made clear that Hamas must be disarmed and removed from governance to ensure lasting security and stability in post-war Gaza. Well, for more on this and more, let's speak with the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. and the Deputy Foreign Minister, Ambassador Danny Aiello, now chairman of the Silver Road Capital Group, and Shiri Fine-Grossman, the former head of regional affairs on Israel's National Security Council. Shiri, Ambassador Aiello, Danny, thank you for joining us. Shiri, I want to start just with you with asking, we've seen Hamas play these games before with the bodies of hostages, but what are they even reportedly now releasing as one of these supposed remains of an Israeli hostage, the body of a Gazan, a Palestinian, even said to be a member of Hamas? What's the point of this? What is Hamas trying to achieve here?
Well, it's a good question. First of all, we don't know if there is a coherent organizational hierarchy and strategy that goes along with what it is doing. I think there's a few likely scenarios that we're talking about the day after that are ranging from, the collapse of the ceasefire and going on to going back to fighting, up until, the Trump peace plan being implemented to this fullest as the Israelis would like to see it implemented. So between those very broad spectrums, there are a few scenarios, and I think most analysts think that Hamas is trying to build this Hezbollah model in Gaza, because all of us cannot believe he will relinquish his power and disarm, but he will try to build this Hezbollah model where he keeps his weapon, he goes dormant, and then comes back again in a few years' time to strike Israel back and to govern Gaza again. So if we take that scenario, it doesn't make any sense what's going on in the field right now, and why would he, do everything that he does, jeopardizing the ceasefire and the humanitarian aid to Gaza. But what we're seeing on the ground is Hamas that is actually refusing to relinquish power, that is wanting to keep his power, keep his weapons, and this is the reality on the ground. And this is what we should look at, and not hypotheses and theories and scenarios. And this is, I think, what we learned from October 7th, to just watch what is happening on the ground and not make any assumptions. And I think this is the time for the Trump president administration to really crack down on the mediators, on Turkey and Qatar, for Hamas to keep his word, and for them to keep their words that they're serious about Hamas disarming.
All right. Well, Danny Shiri defined the problem quite well there and suggested what might be done. But we are getting earlier. There were reports the Israeli government was going to already take punitive measures, delay the streaming of some humanitarian aid into Gaza, not opening the Rafah crossing. It seems to have been backed down because of that. So, what should Israel be doing in this circumstance?
Well, Kalev, the one striking lesson that we have all learned, certainly Israel, is that we should nip any threats from organizations like Hamas or Hezbollah, from the bud. And what we're seeing here is that Hamas is testing us. And they're trying to infiltrate, and there shouldn't be any tolerance. And rightly, the IDF responded, and I think that a few of their terrorists were killed. But that should be a lesson to them that we will not allow what happened previous to the 7th of October, when they tried to lull us to sleep, tried to make us get used to the fact that they're coming to the fence, closing to the fence, throwing all kinds of fire elements, from balloons to anything else. I think this era has stopped. And what we have seen with Hamas, really mass murder, I would say, of their opponents in Gaza, should tell the entire world who is this ruthless enemy. And unfortunately, I have not heard a pips from any of these august international bodies, not the UN, not the Human Rights Committee, not from Macron or anything else. There was one little announcement by the European Commission, better than nothing. But this is what Hamas is, and I hope that now the entire world will realize, maybe it's a tall order to ask for, but they will realize who are the bad guys here and what Israel has been enduring, and that our fight is for humanity, for justice, and basically for the entire free world.
Right. It seems concern for Palestinians being killed is only when it's Israel, Israeli soldiers involved. When it's Hamas, as you say, we hear crickets mainly. Shiri, and also Danny Ambassador Ayalon referring to Israel opening fire on a number of Gazans who were breaking the ceasefire and approaching troops. There are some reports of 5 to 7 Palestinians killed. Well, again, there's only so much Israel can do in this case. There is supposed to be some kind of international body or security forces going into Gaza. There are reports just breaking in the last couple of hours that talks on the so-called second phase have begun in Egypt between Israel and Hamas and the mediators. Shiri, I want to get some sense of how you think. What do you think is we're actually going to see here? Because there's been a lot of speculation. Who are these forces? Who is it going to be? And what would be the best alignment for Israel to feel more secure about its security?
Well, this is going to take a long, long time, and we all need to take a very long breath. It's not going to be days; it's going to be months in the making to make any form of progress here. So we have to be patient. We have to work with partners around the world. We have to work with Palestinians first and most, who are willing to stand up to Hamas, who are willing to say enough is enough. We want to build a country. What is the best scenario that we can do is just take an area by area and clear it and make it as best as possible, so we create an alternative good future for those Palestinians who want to walk away from Hamas's kind of ideology and radicalization. And if we go neighborhood by neighborhood, quarter by quarter, and we just make a better life over there, and the life over there will teach that Israel is not the enemy. We want to live side by side. No Palestinian refugee. You're not a refugee. You're just living in your own land and governing yourself. And this is what we need to strive for, and slowly increase more and more people and stability throughout the Gaza Strip. That process is a long process, and Tony Blair and others are working tirelessly on that project. But in the big sense of the world, and I'm sure you'll get to that later. So I'm sorry if I'm jumping the gun here.
Sure.
But legitimization of Israel is key, and that goes through normalization with our regional partners here, with Saudi Arabia. This is a big piece of the puzzle in making Israel a legitimate part of this region. And this is the time for diplomacy. This is the time where the guns did their thing, and now it's time for the diplomats and the organizations and the bureaucrats to step into play, to work on terror financing and other things, so we can build a different future here, a better one.
Well, you talk about terror financing. Before I go to you, Danny, we do have some breaking reports. I'm stressing these were unconfirmed by the IDF at this point, of a possible terror incident, a shooting on Road 443. That is a road that parts of it do go through Judea and Samaria, through Samaria. Magen David Adom, the emergency rescue service, reporting there are some injured there. Again, these are unconfirmed. We'll just update that as it comes. But I guess it underscores the continuing situation, Danny, and I want you to weigh in on what Shiri said. And I also want to ask you, as the former ambassador to the U.S., we heard President Trump's speech say the war is over, telling Israel to move on, show more flexibility, go on. And the question is, as Shiri says, this is a process that now is looking like it's going to take weeks, if not months. And is the U.S. is President Trump going to be willing to potentially see a renewal of the war, if that's what it takes, if we're just simply not going to see the progress that is expected, especially, for example, the disarming of Hamas?
Well, Kalev, this is the key point. How will the United States conduct itself vis-a-vis Hamas? We see that Hamas is down but not out. And we are reminded that there are Hamas cells in Judea and Samaria, in the Palestinian Authority. This is why it is so difficult for us to accept Palestinian Authority rule over Gaza, because they hardly rule their own territory, Territory A, supposedly, out of in the West Bank. So I think, as the cliche tells us, Kalev, that the devil is in the details. And that means how you demilitarize Gaza, how do you de-radicalize it? It's not enough to demilitarize it. And how do you bring what Biden used to say, if we can remember his name, to a revitalized authority, Palestinian Authority. So here are the real details of how you demilitarize Hamas, and for that, time is of the essence, because as long as there is vacuum there, where the IDF pulled out and Hamas is free to do their murderous acts, this can actually scuttle the entire exercise here. So we need to see the ISF, the International Stabilization Force, going in as fast as possible, hopefully efficiently, with U.S. guidance. They have 200 military personnel, not in Gaza, but in our territory in the Negev, close to the Gazan border. This is essential to do it right now. And then, of course, we'll have to see real reforms in the Palestinian Authority. If we want to see any kind of political process with them, they must first and foremost renounce terrorism, stop the financing and supporting of terror and terrorists and terrorist families, and they would need to change their curriculum so they will stop spewing hatred against Israel and Jews. This is something that is also crucial for the continuation and the success of the process. We need to see a new culture, a new political culture among Palestinians where they really preach and believe in peaceful coexistence.
Right. I'm getting some more updates on this shooting incident. There was a shooting incident in which there were injured, but there are now some reports, again, all unconfirmed, saying this may have been a criminal act or there may have been criminal motives involved there. Again, on ILTV, as more details come of this, we'll update it. I want to go back to the point you just raised, and Shiri also saying there has to be some kind of Palestinian involvement. There are reports that already there's been a team of some a little over a dozen Palestinian technocrats, as it's been said. But Shiri, we did see Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas down there in Sharm el-Sheikh with all those Arab leaders seeming already being brought in as some kind of partner here on the process of what's going to go on in Gaza, at least by the U.S. Some reports say Prime Minister Netanyahu, that's one of the reasons he did not go to Sharm el-Sheikh, along with the issue of the Jewish holiday. The process Danny is talking about could take, again, months, if not years. So how should Israel be dealing with now, for example, the Palestinian participation in this process?
What we're seeing right now with the Abbas participation is fake it till you make it theater. They're faking a Palestinian state that doesn't really exist. Abbas is very, very unpopular, very, very corrupt. There are very good Palestinians that wants peace with us. There are very few, unfortunately. We need a lot more. And if we want to get serious about having a different reality here, we have to move away from, framing old frames like the two-state solution, like, things that we've said, capacity building. No, we need a different narrative coming out from the Palestinian Authority or a new government authority that actually wants to live here, that, that puts UNRWA, that says no more UNRWA. We're going to build schools for ourselves. We're not refugees anymore. We're building our country. So it's not a fake it till you make it. We're not faking it. We're actually building the country. And we focus on building ourselves rather than going after Israel. And I'm seeing the terrorist attack news as we come along. We have to consider a scenario where Hamas says, okay, I've given up on the Gaza. Now it's time to bring out everything I have in the West Bank. And we've seen so many smuggle attempts failing smuggle attacks from Iran with guns and rockets that we haven't seen before. And we have to ask ourselves, how many attempts did succeed? Did we have successful attempts? What do we have in the West Bank? This is why we went into operation in the West Bank itself, why this is such a worrisome scenario, just, on a day when all of Israelis want to get back to their life, the war is over, and then how quickly we're reminded that if we're given hope for even one day, it's been taken away in hours, that we still have terror attacks that we have to live with. And I call out, I'm so thankful for President Trump. But if we want to get serious of having peace in Israel, the road that he's chosen with Erdogan and Qatar, is the right track, but he has to be forceful. He has to make them, put action into the words, like designating the Hamas terror organization. Okay, you're serious about him disarming? How about you designate him that he cannot use your markets to grow financially and then finance whatever he's planning to do in the West Bank?
All right. And Danny, briefly, since you served in the political sphere as well as a Knesset member, as a member of government, Prime Minister Netanyahu, going forward, is he today going already back in court, going in trial politically? Is he going to be able to show the flexibility that President Trump asked of him at the Knesset the other day?
Yes, the short answer, Kalev, is yes. We have seen the flexibility when Trump actually asked him, to say politely, to bring back our squadrons that were going to have the last attack on Iran, a real major blow to the Iranians. Trump decided it's enough, 12 days war, and giving the Iranians a chance. He was even inviting them to the peace conference in Sharm el-Sheikh. I think it was more, tongue-in-cheek, and it actually was humiliating the Iranians by inviting them. Of course, they refused. But yes, I think that now it is quite clear that if Netanyahu has to decide between Trump or Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, he has decided and he will continue. Once he made the first step, there's no going back. And if needs to, he will go all the way to elections, because now he has some positive agenda to go to elections on. So the political clout that Smotrich and Ben-Gvir used to have is no more.
All right. I want to thank Ambassador Danny Ayalon, Sherry Feingrossman, also CEO of the Israel-Africa Institute, I should mention. Thank you so much for joining us on ILTV.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kalev.
And now here's a brief word from one of our sponsors.
עוד יותר, כן, עוד יותר, עוד יותר, כן. מזל טוב.
אתה הכי טוב. עוד יותר טוב.
אלבר, רק את הטוב. ועוד הנפקה מוצלחת לחברת ההייטק הישראלית.
אולי קצת יותר טוב משם.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, נחתנו זה עתה בזמן התעופה בן גוריון. ברוכים הבאים לישראל.
Israel is strong and growing. Now, more than ever, is the time to make Aliyah.
And again, another brief update. There is a shooting incident in Judea and Samaria on Route 443 in Samaria. 5 injured. Again, we don't have more details. Possibly a criminal incident or a terror incident. ILTV will follow the story as it develops. And let's end this broadcast on, I think, some good news. Israel has won, or an Israeli has won, another Nobel Prize. Joel Mokyr, who was born in the Netherlands and raised in Haifa, was awarded the prize for his groundbreaking research on innovation-driven economic growth. Mokyr received half the prize, other half shared by economists Philip Achion and Peter Howitt for their work on how innovation replaces outdated systems to drive prosperity. And Professor Mokyr has said he still considers himself an Israeli, despite being many years there working and studying in the United States. Congratulations to him. And yes, to the State of Israel for this Nobel Prize. And that ends this update on ILTV. Stay tuned, of course, for further updates, or, of course, follow our app. You can do that by just scanning this QR code, which is right on your screen here. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kalev Ben David, and keep watching ILTV.
Welcome to Viewpoint on ILTV, where we bring you leading voices in the Middle East and beyond. In this special, we're taking you inside the Israel-Gaza war to hear from stakeholders, thought leaders, and decision makers. I'm Emily Schrader, and today we're speaking with attorney and founder of the End Jew Hatred movement, Brooke Goldstein. Brooke is a human rights attorney, an award-winning filmmaker, author and founder and executive director of the Lawfare Project, as well as the founder of End Jew Hatred, the movement, and the co-founder of the Zionist movement. She's also a widely known television commentator and has given lectures around the world. Brooke, thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to start by asking you, how did you get involved in all this? How did you get started, and what inspired you to be such an activist for Jewish civil rights?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me, Emily. I'm such a big fan of yours. We work together, and I admire you, I admire everything you do, and I've wanted to sit here with you for a long time.
Mutual.
So thank you for having me. So how did I get started? I was actually in law school, and I ended up producing a documentary film it was called The Making of a Martyr, and I spent 2 years in and out of Jenin, Ramallah, Tulkarm, and Nablus, and I secured firsthand interviews with leaders of terrorist organizations such as Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigades. I went into Israeli prisons. I interviewed children who were arrested for participating in violent activities or attempting to blow themselves up. And I made this film. I co-produced it, called The Making of a Martyr, and it was a documentary film that exposed the illegal state-sponsored recruitment and indoctrination of Muslim children towards violence, which unfortunately is still an issue today. And we followed up with a piece about UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency, which, as you know, operates schools and allows Hamas to come in and recruit the children. And so as a young attorney, I identified this legal argument that the abuse of innocent Muslim children to train them towards jihad is not only the root cause of why we have conflict in the Middle East, but it's the greatest crime against humanity, because you're ruining the future of that society when you have hate education. And the only way to get rid of conflict in the Middle East is to end the hate education, right? No child is born with Jew hatred. Jew hatred is taught, it is indoctrinated, it is taught in the schools, in the textbooks, by the television programs, sometimes by the religious leaders. And this is a crime against these children. So that's how I initially, got into this space. And once we ended up winning...
What year was this?
This was in 2006 when we won the Audience Choice Award for Best Film at the United Nations Documentary Film Festival.
It's really remarkable that we're still dealing with the exact same issues.
Exactly, and those of us who were screaming at the top of our lungs about what is going on and how the United States is aiding and abetting the premeditated murder of Muslim children by continuing to fund UNRWA. We've been talking about this, and yet nobody was listening. And we've been warning about what was going to happen. And now you have an entire society that's been not only held hostage by an Islamist terrorist group, but whose own children, their minds have been kidnapped, and they have been indoctrinated, and now the children are being used, as you see, as human shields, so that terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah are able to claim lawfare, are able to blame Israel for the civilian casualties and the human shields. And wasn't it just discovered, was it yesterday, that Hamas's headquarters in the south are in a children's school?
Not only that, but there have been countless tunnels discovered under UNRWA buildings, and we know the collusion between the two has been ongoing for many years, apparently since at least 2006,
right,
with the, the release of your film. Moving forward to October 7th, I know you're a lifelong Jewish rights activist, but in addition to that, I'm curious how you see the situation change, how you saw the situation change after October 7th.
Well, I'm happy you call me a Jewish rights activist, because I really hate the term pro-Israel. Because what we're really doing, we're not trying to convince people to love a foreign country. We're engaged in civil rights activism on behalf of the Jewish community as a minority community. My job is not necessarily convincing haters to love us, but empowering the Jewish community to stand up for themselves when they're discriminated against.
One of the ways in which your work has been, I think, most influential, especially as of late, after October 7th, is through Lawfare. Now, you are the founder of the Lawfare Project. Can you tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing there and why it's so important to legally fight against discrimination against Jewish minorities?
Yeah, so you asked before also what changed after October the 7th. And I think that there was an awakening to what people in the counterterrorism community have been warning about for years, which is the indoctrination and frankly, what I believe to be the greatest subversive influence campaign that has ever taken place on this planet, which is the destruction of the American democracy from within, the billions of dollars of funding coming in from Iran to fund the protest and the havoc and the pro-Hamas mobs on the streets of New York and DC and LA and Paris and London and so forth, combined with the education that's been happening for 15 years, funded by Qatar to the tune of $1 billion a year, where our youth are being radicalized in our institutions of higher learning. And of course, you have the degradation of liberal democracy, and in my opinion, almost an entire party now that has adopted a philosophy, this so-called woke progressive philosophy, which is afuch, which is the opposite of what traditional liberalism is, which believes in freedom of speech and believes in freedom of association and so forth, and the criticism of religion.
Sorry to cut you off.
Okay.
I want to know, how is it that Jews, the Jewish community, got pushed outside of this whole so-called, self-declared progressive movement?
Well, it was obvious. I mean, this is what happened with Jews who became communists and Jews who were, democratic socialists in Germany at the beginning of the rise of the Nazi Party. Is we always have this notion that if we reject our identity, then we will be accepted. And these movements, all of the minority rights movements, the civil rights movements, were started in America with the help of the Jewish community. The NAACP was founded with the help of the Jewish community. We had Rabbi Heschel marching hand in hand with Martin Luther King for the black civil rights movements of the 50s and 60s. Initially, it was Jewish women who launched the Me Too movement before they were pushed out by people like Linda Sarsour and Tamika Mallory. That whole thing, was perverted. And so that's why we launched about 3.5 years ago, the End Jew Hatred movement, because Jews have always been marching for others. It's always been Jews for Black Lives Matter, Jews for gay rights, or Jews for women's rights. But now is the time for a Jews for Jewish rights movement. There has never been a Jewish civil rights movement in America. Isn't that just a remarkable thing to think about?
It really is, especially considering the fact that there is, not like other countries, but there is a history of even institutionalized anti-Semitism, not allowing Jews and blacks through the main entrances, not allowing Jews and blacks into certain areas, certain country clubs, even until the 90s. So it really is remarkable that there hasn't been any kind of push before when it comes to civil rights. I wanted to ask you a little bit more specifically about the legal aspect. What do you think can or should be done about some of these pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah demonstrations, if we can call them that, mobs we've seen popping up all over the United States and Europe and Canada, as you mentioned?
Well, the full force of the law needs to be used against them. The degradation of a democracy is when there is no rule of law. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. We represented a gentleman named Matt Greenman, who was viciously beaten up on the streets of New York by people who were engaged in a pro-Hamas or pro-Palestinian protest. And we had enormous pushback from the Manhattan DA's office to prosecute this as a hate crime. Eventually, we had to go to the feds, and we got federal hate crimes and conspiracy charges, and the man was subsequently sentenced. But there is a reluctance, unfortunately, on behalf of the government and on behalf of law enforcement to see what is happening as a civil rights issue. You mentioned before, it's not the same to be black now as it was 30 years ago. It's not the same to be a woman in the workforce as it was 10 years ago. Why is anti-Jewish discrimination still an accepted form of behavior? Why is it still socially acceptable? And the reason is because we have formulated this and described it as a political issue. Right? If you're angry at Israel, it is okay because it's politics to take it out on someone because they're Jewish. This is the ultimate form of racism. Right? If I'm angry at the Chinese government for the way they handled COVID. I can't go to a local Chinese American student, discriminate against him, refuse to allow him entry into a class. That's racism 101. But it's acceptable with the Jewish community because it's all seen as political issues, right? Zionism is a political point of view. It's not part of your ethnic, cultural, and religious identity, or so we're told. So the utility, and to sum it up, and to answer your question, the utility of civil rights litigation, what I call impact litigation, is to center this as it should be, a minority rights issue. The Jewish community is the oldest, most persecuted minority community in human history. We deserve equal protection under the law. We deserve to have our civil rights enforced, and we should not be responding to anti-Jewish discrimination with pro-Israel advocacy. We should be responding to it by fully enforcing all of our rights. And that's why it's so important. And if you take anything from this episode, there is nothing wrong with a Jew standing up for him or herself, right? I can't tell you how many times a family or a student comes to me and the stories they tell me of anti-Jewish discrimination are horrific, but they're afraid. They're afraid to sign on as a plaintiff. They're afraid to complain lest they be retaliated against. We have to shed that fear. We have to step into our power. We have to actually accept that we've been victimized. Okay, we've been victimized, but we cannot remain victims. And we must stand up for ourselves in courts of law, in the streets, which is what we do with the End Jew Hatred movement, and also, of course, in the media.
Now, you spoke a lot about the need to use the law to protect Jewish civil rights, in particular in the United States. You are leading, through the Lawfare Project, a lawsuit against Columbia University. I believe it's still ongoing. Can you tell us a little bit about this case? I mean, Columbia has been all over the news because of these anti-Israel, pro-Hamas encampments on campus. We've seen shocking scenes of anti-Semitism, explicit calls to violence in some of these demonstrations. What's going on, and what is the Lawfare Project's case on this issue?
So thank you for asking. We are very proud to represent a student, not just at Columbia University, but we also represent the 10 students who were locked in the library at Cooper Union while a pro-Hamas mob was banging on the window, threatening violence, and they had to be escorted out of the building under police protection. We represent a student at Carnegie Mellon University, the third largest recipient of funds from Qatar. And there's one thing in common. All of them were discriminated against. They were harassed. They were treated differently. They were denied equal access to university facilities, and they were retaliated against because they're Jewish. Always because they're Jewish. And obviously the excuse of those who engage in civil rights violations are, well, it's just politics. We're just protesting. We're protesting the policies of the Israeli government. And yet the Jewish students are being treated differently because they're Jewish. And that's the essence of all of our cases, whether it's against schools, whether we're suing hospital systems. We are providing representation to the Jewish community when they've been treated differently because of their ethnic, cultural, religion, or because of where they're born. We sued the National Lawyers Guild for enforcing a so-called BDS resolution for refusing to do business with an Israeli company. And what's so interesting is we made the novel argument, which is obvious on its face now if you look back at it. But what BDS is national origin discrimination. You are refusing to deal with someone because of where they're born. And just like I can't have a restaurant with a sign that says no Chinese allowed, or a club that says no Africans allowed, so too is it illegal in the United States to operate a business and refuse to deal with someone because they were born in Israel. And so we use impact litigation, civil rights litigation, the same way that every other minority community has done in the United States. And we use it to enforce the rights of the Jewish community.
Now, have you faced any kind of retaliation or discrimination for so much of this impact litigation? I know recently there was a story about some of the administrators, I think, speaking about you in a WhatsApp chat. What kinds of things have you, as a leader in this field, experienced or faced?
Well, obviously, that WhatsApp story that broke in Winnipeg, it just shows the vile nature of the administrators that we're working with. It's the same that happened in Columbia University when it was shown that the administrators were texting each other, making fun of the Jewish students who were complaining and appealing to them to help them. But I think you don't focus on the hate. But what we do need to focus on in terms of the pushback is what I mentioned and alluded to a little bit before, is the reluctance of the Jewish community to forcefully stand up for themselves, right? After so many years of persecution and genocide, we have this epigenetic trauma that Noah Tishby talks a lot about, where we feel that maybe we'll have a better chance of survival if we hide, or if we assimilate, or if we put our head down and we ignore what's happening. Well, I think history has proven the opposite is true. And one of the most important things you need to do to fight in democracy, we don't make change through violence. We make change through the legal and legislative systems. And if you think about it, every single right, as an American, that I enjoy is, if not written out explicitly in the Constitution, was a product of a seminal civil rights case, right? So Roe v. Wade, which at one point guaranteed the ultimate women's right to choose, but has, now been overturned partially. Or Brown v. Board of Education, when one case got rid of segregation in American schools, desegregated American schools. The Asian community took advantage of the legal system as they should have, and they sued Harvard University and reversed affirmative action. Where are the seminal Supreme Court cases on behalf of the Jewish community? This is what we aim to achieve. We aim to bring these groundbreaking civil rights cases so that we can shape the fabric of our society, which, by the way, our cases don't just benefit the Jewish community. You set a precedent in a court of law that's equally applicable to any other minority as well. And what we are saying is you cannot, no matter how much you hate, whatever your politics are, whatever you think of a foreign country thousands of miles away, that is no justification to engage in discrimination against someone because of how they look, because of their skin color, because of their religion, or because of where they were born.
I want to shift a little bit to speak about Israel more specifically, as the legal issue has been a huge problem for the state of Israel during this war. We're dealing with the ICC, we're dealing with the ICJ, a lot of international lawfare being weaponized against the state of Israel. As a legal expert, what is your take on this issue that Israel is facing? How should Israel be responding to the accusations and the even potential arrest warrants, for Netanyahu, for the defense minister Gallant? What's your response to this lawfare?
Well, number one, it's important to make the world understand that this isn't just an issue for Israel. I mentioned the concept of creating precedents in international law. And because every single Western democracy is fighting on this asymmetric battlefield against theologically motivated terrorists, facing terrorists that hide behind their own civilians, that use their civilians in schools as rocket launching pads and as shields, and recruit children for suicide homicide activities happening in Afghanistan, happening in Iraq. You have the same happening a little bit, in Yemen with the child soldiers and Sudan. These are issues that every Western democracy is facing. And if we allow precedents in international law to be set against Israel, which, by the way, goes above and beyond what is even required by the laws of armed conflict to comply, then all Western democracies will suffer from this, number one. Number two, and I've written about this, it was a huge strategic mistake to go before the ICJ and to legitimize this illegitimate court, which, by the way, a lot of information is now going to start coming out about the connection between Iran as well as the financial incentives that were given to the South Africans to bring this case. And what you said, it's lawfare. It's the use of the law as a weapon of war. The ICJ and these judges have no authority whatsoever to judge and restrict Israel as it fights on this asymmetric battlefield with the sole goal of not just protecting its own civilians, but protecting the civilians who are being used as human shields. We cannot legitimize these kangaroo courts. And unfortunately, we've created this industry of responding in kind to lawfare. Now, I have to admit, I was a part of it. Right? There was a long time ago where, 10 years ago, we were writing briefs and we were dissecting the arguments. But I think, we switched strategy. The time is to go on the offense. It's not to be on the defense. It's to use the law, for our benefit, because the truth is on our side, the law is on our side, and we've spent so much time and effort organizing a legal defense. The time now should be used to organize a legal offense.
Well, you may have just answered my last question. We are running out of time, but I wanted to ask you a very broad question, not an easy one, but a broad one. Can we defeat anti-Semitism? And if so, how?
Well, we call it Jew hatred now. But and I'll tell you why, because not many people know this. It is so important to choose your words carefully. Words are everything. The language we use to describe our situation basically dictates our situation. And anti-Semitism, not many people know, is a term that was invented by German eugenicists to justify in a pseudo-intellectual way what they thought to be the study of the Semitic races, which is not just Jewish, okay? It's not anti-Semitic, it's not just Jewish, as inferior to the Aryan race. Now, Ronald Lauder once told me that when he went to a cocktail party and he said, well, that's anti-Semitic, people didn't really, bat an eye. But when he accused someone of being a Jew hater, he got a more visceral reaction. Because there's no question as to what Jew hatred is. And if you are against hatred against blacks or hatred against Asians or gays or Muslims, so too must you be against hatred against Jews, or you are the bigot. And I said in the beginning, and I'll conclude with this, nobody is born with Jew hatred in their heart. Obviously, hatred is an emotion, but Jew hatred is taught, it is indoctrinated. And of course, there is a possibility of getting rid of it. But it is so deeply ingrained, unfortunately, in the Islamist society right now, in Gaza, under the Palestinian Authority. A lot of radical Islam focuses on hatred, not just against Jews, but against
even
all
inside
infidels,
the UN,
against the jihad. This is a taught phenomenon. And that's why, and I started my career off it, and I will probably end my career with the same lesson. Children are innocent. Okay, no child deserves to be taught to hate Jews or to hate themselves or to commit homicide, suicide for the sake of killing Jews or killing infidels. This is a crime against humanity. And when we get to the root cause of the issue, which is education, we can solve this problem. But the second thing to that, and I'll conclude, Black Lives Matter did not get rid of anti-Black racism. And the Me Too movement did not get rid of male misogyny. But what they did is they made it socially unacceptable to engage in certain behavior or to say the N-word, or, nobody wants to be like Harvey Weinstein, because what they did is they imposed consequences for that type of behavior. And the raison d'etre of the End Jew Hatred movement is to empower Jewish communities to ensure there are consequences when they are discriminated against, or when they are, subjected to Jew hatred. And we do it through the legal system with the Lawfare Project by filing civil rights cases. And we do it through the End Jew Hatred movement with grassroots mobilization, where we empower communities. We have click-send emails, we do protests. There's a whole lot of things that we do, and we ensure results. And results means that you create a deterrent effect, that if you engage in this behavior, you will get a result, whether you're held accountable in court or you're going to have a protest outside that might potentially affect your business or give you bad press. And hopefully you will be deterred from behaving this way, so that slowly it becomes socially unacceptable once again, that people are shunned and they are pointed at, and everybody agrees that what they are doing is wrong. And I think this is the essential concept of separating pro-Israel advocacy from Jewish civil rights advocacy. Because no matter, again, what you think of Israel, we must get people to understand that you cannot treat Jewish people differently. You cannot discriminate against us as a minority community because you have a certain political opinion.
It's so interesting. I know I said last question, but I'm going to say one more. It's so interesting that you're speaking about how you can't discriminate against Jews as a minority group, the same as you wouldn't against any other minority. And yet, I feel like, especially in the United States, with the battle on campus right now, we're seeing that there is an entire movement dedicated towards pushing Jews out of those spaces, out of that concept of a historically oppressed minority. And so much of that is being motivated and funded by Qatar and Iran, the Islamic Republic, and what they're doing to put Jews in a different category, to say no, Jews, they're all the Zionists, and it's Israel, and it's a political issue. So on the one hand, we're dealing with, a historically oppressed minority, and on the other hand, we're dealing with opposition saying that we're not. I don't know if you agree with me on this challenge that we're facing, but I think it's kind of almost unique position for a minority group to be in, because you don't see an effort to the tune of billions of dollars to claim that Asian Americans are secretly all Chinese agents.
Right.
Yet you do see that with the Jewish community, especially from the funding of Qatar, from the disinformation of the Islamic Republic. Is that something that you guys have touched on or dealt with at both End Jew Hatred and the Lawfare Project?
Yes, and I think it was actually touched on very wisely by Netanyahu when he just gave his speech before Congress. These are useful idiots. All of the white 17, 18-year-old students who've never set foot in the Middle East, who are being sold this garbage, right, about progressivism and human rights and minority rights activism. And if you're gay and you're advocating, for an Islamic state of Palestine, on its face, you can see how insane it is. And the progressive movement obviously is anything but progressive. They've perverted liberalism. And frankly, it has nothing to do with the Jews. Israel is a decoy, right? The Jews are like the canary in the coal miner's tunnel. We're the first to go. We're the first to be discriminated against. But what you have right now, and this is why I really don't like the description of pro-Hamas protesters, we have pro-terror mobs that are using Israel or whatever's happening in the Middle East as an excuse to destabilize the United States, to destabilize this democracy and sow terror and fear, and to undermine our ability to govern ourselves and see clearly between what is right and what is wrong. Just like Netanyahu said, you either stand on the side of people who are burning babies in ovens and raping and murdering women and kidnapping Americans, or you stand on the side of a democracy that's trying to fight and defeat this evil. And unfortunately, the population in the United States right now, the polls are saying I think the ages are 18 to 24, are so morally confused because of the garbage education that they've been fed by Qatar, right, and China and Russia that have also funded our education. They don't know what's up or down anymore.
Yeah, it's very, very disturbing reality. But of course, the work that you are doing at Lawfare Project, as well as End Jew Hatred, is tremendously important to the American Jewish community and the global Jewish community. So with that, we will wrap up. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Brooke Goldstein, founder of the Lawfare Project and the End Jew Hatred movement. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
עוד יותר, כן, עוד יותר, עוד יותר, כן. מזל טוב.
אתה הכי טוב. עוד יותר טוב.
אלבר, רק את הטוב! ועוד הנפקה מוצלחת לחברת ההייטק הישראלית.
אולי תהיה יותר טוב, משה.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, נחתנו זה עתה בזמן התעופה בן גוריון. ברוכים הבאים לישראל.
Israel is strong and growing. Now, more than ever, is the time to make Aliyah.
On October 7, I was here, at the Nova Music Festival. I ran for my life, hid for 7 hours. Terrorists shot me, twice. Thankfully, I survived. I'm still dealing with trauma, and I'm not alone. 3 million Israelis are in trauma. They need mental health care or physical rehabilitation. Wounded soldiers, families, and scared children.
Since 1912, Hadassah has been a life-changing force in Israel. Today, Hadassah has 2 world-renowned hospitals, pioneers breakthrough medical research, cares for youth, and has built the much-needed and largest rehabilitation facility in Jerusalem.
Thank you to everyone at Hadassah Hospitals. You've been helping me and so many others. And a special thanks to one nurse, my mom. I love you.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We're bringing you the biggest headlines from Israel and the Middle East in just 5 minutes. I'm Caleb Ben David, and let's get into the top headlines of the hour. Hamas continues to delay in returning the remains of the hostages no longer living, drawing sharp criticism and warnings from both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Following the initial return of 4 bodies on Monday, last night a second convoy of 4 coffins crossed into Israel and was taken to the National Center of Forensic Medicine for identification. This morning, 3 of the 4 were confirmed. Uriel Baruch, 35, from Givon, who was seized and murdered at the Nova Festival, IDF soldier Tamir Nimrati, 20, from Nirit, and Eitan Levy, 53, a taxi driver from Bat Yam, taken while dropping off a friend at Kibbutz Be'eri. A security official confirmed that the 4th body returned to Israel last night did not belong to a hostage, but was a member of Hamas. Now, with these returns, 7 hostages' bodies have now come home since the deal took effect. According to Israeli officials and the families, 21 bodies are still to be brought back. Hamas has reportedly told mediators that it will return 4 more bodies later today. These latest identifications follows Tuesday's confirmations of the 4 others returned earlier. Guy Iluz, 26, seized at the Nova Festival. Bipin Joshi, 24, a Nepalese agricultural student taken from Kibbutz Alumim. Yossi Sharabi, 53, of Kibbutz Be'eri. And Captain Daniel Peretz, 22, an Army Corps officer killed in the fighting in Nahal Oz. All are now on their way to a proper burial. The families of the remaining hostages say the timetable being dictated by Hamas is unbearable and that the agreement must be honored in full. Vigils are continuing at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square and outside the Abu Kabir Forensic Center, with participants demanding the return of all hostages. Officials caution the next phase will be slower and messier, with complex searches amid rubble, but the promise remains the same: bring every one of Israel's hostages home. Back in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump warned Hamas to carry out its obligations under the agreement or face the consequences. Trump said Tuesday that Hamas has told his top aides that it will disarm and that the terror group could be dealt with violently if it refuses to do so. Trump also pressed the Palestinian terror group to follow through with its release of all dead hostages still being held in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu also weighed in, telling the U.S. channel CBS TV that if Hamas does not fulfill all of its commitments that it agreed to, including disarming and the demilitarization of Gaza, then all hell will break loose, this referring back to Trump's earlier comments. Meanwhile, the 20 freed hostages reunited with their families on Monday have now spent 2 days back in Israel after the tears, cheers, and hugs following more than 2 years in Hamas captivity. The last 20 living hostages were released by Hamas to Red Cross teams, then transferred to Israeli military control and then to hospital for a period of rehabilitation while meeting immediate family members and close friends. The released captives are beginning medical and psychological rehabilitation as the nation celebrates their return and the ceasefire deal moves forward. Among the touching moments, Guy Gilbert Dalal, greeted by his family in matching T-shirts printed "Guy is home, the heart is whole again," with his father wrapped in an Israeli flag. Other reunions included Avi Natan Or with his girlfriend and former hostage, Noah Argamani, and Omri Miran speaking to his young daughters via a video call before embracing them in person. Now, while Israel observes the ceasefire, Hamas gunmen have launched a bloody crackdown in Gaza, executing dozens of their own people on the streets. The documented public executions comes as Hamas tries to reassert its control over the Gaza Strip. And that ends this update on ILTV. Stay tuned for further updates on the hour. Of course, you can download our app just by scanning that QR code, which is now on your screen. Thanks for joining us. I'm Khalid Ben David.
Welcome to One on One. I'm Lidar Greve-Lazi, and I'll be your host for this new series where we sit down with passionate voices shaping the conversation around identity, courage, and the future of Israel. These are stories that will inspire you, challenge assumptions, and spark new perspectives. For our very first episode, we're honored to introduce a woman whose journey defies expectations and whose voice refuses to be silenced. Raised in Syria and Lebanon, Rawan Osman grew up believing the worst about Israel, but her path led her to France, to freedom of thought, and ultimately to a new identity. Today, she's a proud Zionist and a bold voice against extremism and complacency. Rawan's story isn't just personal, it's a challenge to everything we think we know. Welcome to One on One with Rawan Osman. Rawan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start to hear a little bit about your personal story. You grew up in Syria, you grew up in Lebanon. What was the turning point for you? The moment where you realized or first began to question the narrative that you'd been taught your whole life?
So to be clear, I grew up in Lebanon. The first 18 years of my life, I was raised in the Bekaa Valley, and I attended a French Catholic school, although my father is Sunni from Damascus and my mom is Shiite from the Bekaa Valley. And it's important to mention that my mother is the daughter of the Lebanese Civil War. This is why religion was irrelevant in my upbringing. After the atrocities the Lebanese committed against one another, there is a generation that wanted to distance itself from sectarianism, from the differences imposed by religiosity, etc. I grew up visiting Damascus several times per year. And although my upbringing was among tolerant, liberal, democratic people, the only thing everybody hated is Israel and the Jews and the Zionists. And I always explain when I go for public speaking around the world, but also in Israel, that it was really easy to hate the Israelis and the Jews. Because during my upbringing, during my childhood, Israel occupied South Lebanon. Nobody told us that Israel occupied South Lebanon because they needed a buffer zone after Arafat and his gang and their supporters from the left side of the political spectrum from around the globe abused the Lebanese territory to send terrorists to attack Israeli civilians. After more than 10 years of restraint, eventually Israel opted for a military action to occupy the south, by which they created a buffer zone. And also, we did not interact with Jews. The world seems to forget, especially in the West, that more than 800,000 Jews were uprooted from the Arab world. So they weren't present around us to challenge whatever the state wanted us to believe. And back in my days, we had 3 TV channels. So it doesn't matter on which side of the political spectrum you came, everybody, what do I mean by everybody? Your parents and your family members, the famous people you see on TV, the intelligent ones who write in the newspaper, they all told a consistent story about the Zionist entity, the neighbors in the south, the assailants, etc. So growing up that way, unfortunately, I was, during my teenage, one of Hezbollah's biggest fans until I woke up. So you ask about the turning point, and I told this story hundreds of times already. It was a coincidence. When I wanted to study in Europe, the natural destination was France, because I spoke French coming from Lebanon. And I landed in Strasbourg in the Jewish quarter, near one of the biggest synagogues in Europe. And I did not think that the Jewish quarter had any Jews, because the Jewish quarter where I worked in my early 20s in Damascus had no Jews. The Jewish quarter in Beirut had no Jews. So I was surprised that this neighborhood in Strasbourg was filled with Jews. And upon the first encounter, I had a panic attack. But that incident shook me to my core and led me to ask for the first time, why? Because I was sharing the same space in a grocery store with a Jew, the enemy. Why was the Jew the enemy? And that started my journey in discovering how intensively brainwashed and lied to we were.
An incredible story of, I guess, just chance, as you put it. And you know, you mentioned that all of your surroundings, your family, everyone around you in Lebanon and Syria had the same view. So how did your family, how did your parents take it when you came home one day and said, you know, I've changed and I have a new worldview now?
It did not happen overnight. After spending a year in France, where I had access to uncensored information, unlike the case of many Lebanese and Syrians, that was before the days of social media. Having access to information, I could read the history of our region. And it was a long process for me to understand, hold on a second, what do you mean we like Hezbollah when the former Secretary General, who did not die of old age, Hassan Nasrallah, said upon the foundation of Hezbollah that they do not acknowledge political borders, that their goal is to make Lebanon an extension of the Islamic Republic in Iran. It was really easy to realize, obviously, I do not subscribe to this agenda. So when I returned, infuriated, outraged to the Middle East, I tried to share naturally with my family members, my close friends, to tell them, look, I made a discovery. Of course, it was not a discovery. Hezbollah published their manifesto in the newspaper. People knew, but they were doped or bored, or they chose to submit, to comply, and slowly Hezbollah grew to the point where in the past few years we saw that they are more powerful than the state in Lebanon. But people were not interested. It's a lot of work. The history of our region is very, very complex. So where do you start? With which story? With the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, that the concept of the nation state is a modern one, that Lebanon is not much older than Israel, that Jordan is a very interesting part that was carved of the British Mandate of Palestine. There's a lot to unpack, that the Jews did not come from Eastern Europe, as we learned in history class back when I was 12 in Lebanon. People were not interested. It is much easier to comply, to accept that hundreds of millions believe that Israel is an occupying aggressor state. Leave it at that. And standing with the Palestinian makes you look good, because if the Palestinian is the underdog, then as a moral person, you have to stand against them. Plus, the law in many Arab countries forbid people-to-people contact between their countries, for example, in Lebanon or Kuwait or Algeria or Iraq. They forbid the contact between their citizens and Israelis, even if you met Israelis abroad, even if you were on a holiday. in India, in Australia, in Canada, you're not allowed to speak to them because it's very important to dehumanize the Jew/Zionist/Israeli. So people were not interested. And it took a very long time for me to publicly speak and declare that I stand with Israel.
And you know, there are misconceptions not just in the Arab world about Israel, but also in the West about, let's call it, radical Islamist ideology. I mean, you've been very vocal about Islamist extremism and its impact in not just in the Middle East, but also in Europe, in France, and throughout the world. What are the most sort of dangerous misconceptions you think the West holds about this radical ideology?
That it's benign. They underestimate the danger. They think that it is condescending to say that we don't want you to transform our culture. Why not? If they come to Denmark or to Germany or anywhere in the UK or in France and they say, I know that I have to send my children to this public school because of my residency or because of where I live, but I won't until you remove pork from the menu. Or I know that I'm a citizen who obtained the German citizenship or British, whatever, but I will not send my 7-year-old to the swimming class. The West is too tolerant. And this sounds like a silly statement. I've watched Europe transform in the past 15 years. I've lived in France, I lived in Cyprus, and I lived in Germany. And the more or the higher the expectation of Islamists is, the lower the expectation or the lower the standards of the EU are getting. And this is dangerous because it's reshaping the culture. You see it when you listen to the rap songs. You see it when you see how the European teenagers themselves behave, even if they're not a generation of those who emigrated, immigrants or refugees, even if they're not at all connected with immigrants or refugees, the culture is changing, the attitude is changing, the expectation, the relationship with the state is changing. Islamists are exploiting the weaknesses of Western democracies. And this we have seen mostly during this encampment movement. We have seen that they demand representation because they say we are equal human beings. I would like, or in my culture, it's acceptable to demand of your wife and daughters, for example, to wear the veil, and in some cases also the niqab. It's acceptable in my culture. And as we are equal human beings, then I have the same rights you do, then I call the shots in my home. And what I'm proposing to many Europeans is the following. Human beings are indeed equal. We have equal rights, but we also have equal responsibilities. Human beings are equal, but cultures are not. If cultures were equal, why do hundreds of millions aspire to relocate to the West? They very much loathe and seek to destroy. We hear public statements aiming to bring the system down from within. And watching this, I can only say to the Westerners, you undermine, you underestimate how efficient Islamists can be in bringing the system down from within. When you grant them citizenship, you offer them political power. So, for example, after October 7th, my country, Germany, was very supportive of Israel. They understood why Israel had to wage a war against Hamas. But after a year or so, when it was the time for elections, politicians mellowed down, changed their attitude because they realized that on the streets, there is a movement that is vocal, angry, and supportive of Hamas, or at least conflating Hamas with the civilians in Gaza. Many of them caved. This is what I mean by you grant them political power, and by that you give them access to reshaping your culture, and in some cases, to bring the system down from within. You have a fifth column that exploits welfare, that works against you, that loathes your values, and that operates in a parallel manner. So I read the other day how many courts in England operate or adopt Sharia law, and that is tolerated, permitted, or neglected. And that is dangerous. I do not understand who thought that it's a good idea to ignore it, to keep shoving the problem under the carpet. It's going to explode in everybody's face.
And some people say that it's too late, that Europe is essentially doomed. I mean, what do you think about that?
I believe people say that, especially if they live in Europe, because of the statistics. If in Denmark, for example, the average birth rate per family, per couple is 1.5, compared to 6 or 5.5 in other parts of Europe. If you see the growth in Muslim communities compared to the growth in European societies, especially in Western Europe, this can come across as alarming, especially when you see demonstrations, protests calling for an Islamic caliphate. So in Amsterdam or in Hamburg in northern Germany, when they shout out loud without being intimidated by the presence of police, that they want to bring a caliphate in those countries, that maybe scares a European, as you can imagine, especially if they do not really understand the Islamic culture.
So you speak out publicly on all of these issues. Do you feel safe speaking out, especially given the sentiment that we're seeing now on the streets of Europe, the United States, and around the world? And also, you know, what type of reactions have you been getting, and are there any that sort of stuck with you?
Look, I have never been vocal or as vocal before October 7th. After October 7th, have you heard this term, accidental activist? I'm one of them. I became a public figure without planning on doing so. Out of outrage, out of shame and anger, I volunteered to translate the videos which were filmed and shared by Hamas. And as a mother and a woman, I did not care, or I did not have a plan. I just spoke out, sometimes at the beginning without a light, without a mic, without training, without any understanding of how to use social media. But I knew that social media is very powerful, effective. It is my own platform for free. I don't need anybody's permission. I'm gonna speak my mind and say no. Until here, Siyamnu, this is the red line. And as you mentioned, I have never imagined how rampant anti-Semitism all over the world was. I thought it's the case in the Arab world. And that was shocking. I can't say that I'm scared. At the beginning, I was receiving a lot of death threats. But again, those who want to kill you will not notify you ahead of time. It was meant to intimidate me, and I'm not the only one who receives death threats. They gave up, again, because if they want to kill you, they're not going to tell you. So I did have to implement measures for my personal safety. But I spend a lot of time in Israel, and here I feel very safe. If I'm doing public speaking, especially on hostile territory, on some universities in the US and Canada and some European campuses, then I have security and I have bodyguards. But this doesn't make me hesitate. We need to speak up, and we need to inspire the younger generations to speak up against jihadism, terrorism, call it whatever you like. In Europe, they've paid a high price. In America, they all remember 9/11. Nobody has a solution or a strategy on how to contain or eradicate this problem. And Israel was hit on October 7th, and many who saw the magnitude of that event, whether they're Jews or not, decided to speak up, even in the Arab world, although they're not numerous because it is a dangerous position to adopt in public. But people are speaking up because, and this was my thought on October 7th, if they dared, if Hamas, but in my mind, if jihadists dared do this to Israelis, knowing that the USA has Israel's back, what can they do to their enemies in Lebanon or in Syria or in Iraq? This should be alarming to the entire world. And yet, in an interesting plot twist, we've witnessed a very, very short sympathy expressed towards the Israelis. And even before Israel reacted, the world turned around and they started denying actions Hamas bragged about. They started justifying what Hamas themselves could not justify. That is just to help us see the amount of hatred, anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, and ignorance. And we are witnessing, or we witnessed the birth of a freak, the child of the strange marriage between the far left and Islamism.
You know, you have become a very prominent, as you mentioned, accidental activist, speaking out against extremism, but also you've become a very strong and loud supporter of Israel. So I want to ask, what does Israel mean to you personally?
Since October 7th, I visited 11 times. I knew that my heart is in this country. I have a strange connection even before I came, because I was exposed to the culture through the friends and the colleagues I had in the past years. But it's nothing compares to actually coming here and to watching how people interact with one another, knowing that the country is bleeding, that the healing process will not start until the hostages are back, all of them. Every time I come, my bond with Israel becomes stronger. And that is not to say that I'm blind to the problems in Israel. There's a lot of room for improvement, but I see a lot of potential, tremendous potential in the people and in the country. To me, Israel is a miracle. And I always give this example to teenagers who are skeptical, who roll their eyes. And I ask them if they tried to start a book club, any tiny project. Now think that the Jewish state became a country in spite of the Holocaust. Imagine you were a Jew in 1945, sitting in a concentration or death camp. If I told you you're going to survive and you're going to live to see the birth of a Jewish state, you'd think I'm hallucinating. Yet the Jews pulled it through, knowing how badly the Jews can argue. They pulled it through. It is amazing. And it's a beacon of light in our region. It's a pioneering, innovative country in spite of the non-stop stress, the non-stop suspense. To put it mildly, it's an understatement. No other country could have survived all this. And not only they survived, they thrived. And until today, although many Israelis disagree, and I watch this rift growing in Israeli society with a lot of sadness and a lot of fear, because I watch the news in the Arab world and I tell my Israeli friends, you have no idea. You're scrutinized, you're under the microscope, and every bad statement against any Israeli is celebrated. Still, I think that Israel will prevail, B'ezrat Hashem, because I see the potential and the culture and that the most annoying Israelis, no matter how badly they criticize you, they will take a bullet for you.
And so I have to ask, are you optimistic about the future not only of Israel, but of the region, of perhaps an expansion of the Abraham Accords with Lebanon, with Syria? I mean, what is your view of the future?
I'm very optimistic, but I'm also realistic. I do public speaking in Israel, and I made sure to tell the Israelis since October 7th, listen to me. This is not going to be a short war. This is meant to be the final war. Hamas truly thought they kick-started a process that will lead to the demise of Israel. But they miscalculated because they do not know how resilient the Israelis are. This will not end soon, and it will get worse, much worse, until it gets better once and for all. If you don't want to send your children and grandchildren to fight as you are now, you have to be patient and ensure Hamas, not physically, but that this ideology is obliterated. And we are seeing it expand in the region, and I also told them that. You cannot get rid of Hamas only. Hezbollah is a perfect example of a problem the world, the region, even Israel, shoved under the carpet for so long until it became so massive, it can no longer be ignored, and it exploded in our faces. But Israel dealt with it. Now we have this interesting turn of events in Syria, and I still think that Lebanon and Syria will join the Abraham Accords. Now, we have many hiccups on the way, but it was necessary. Nothing else was going to remove Assad. Nothing else would have disrupted or cut off the supply chain between Iran and Hezbollah. You needed to reshuffle the cards in Syria. The situation is very critical, volatile, and a lot of people are suffering. So the price is very high, but I truly believe there are enough partners on the ground, even underground, who will help us pull this through and transform the region, even if that requires redrawing the map of the Middle East.
Rawan, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, your story reminds us that courage and curiosity can break through the deepest of indoctrinations, and that Israel's future is about people, values, and a willingness to take a stand, even when it's inconvenient, when it's dangerous, and that the future still remains bright. Rawan Osman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And at One-on-One, we believe that when something matters, you invest in it. That idea of investing in identity, purpose, and possibility is what drives this series. Some of our guests are rooted in Israel, others are inspired by it, but all of them remind us when you invest in what matters most, you shape the world around you. That's why we're proud that this series is sponsored by Israel Bonds Development Corporation for Israel. And to continue the conversation, I'm honored to introduce Laura Stein, a member of the Israel Bonds Board and National Campaign Advisory Committee, whose commitment to Israel takes a very different form, but is grounded in the same belief that investing in Israel isn't just financial, it's personal. Laura, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Lidar. Thank you for allowing me to join you today. And thank you for sharing Rawan's inspiring message.
Laura, we just heard Rawan speak so powerfully about investing in Israel through her advocacy. And I'd love to hear from you what first inspired you to invest in Israel with Israel Bonds, and what does that personal investment mean to you?
My first interaction with Israel Bonds was at my bat mitzvah on Masada in Israel, where my mother handed me a certificate, which was an Israel bond. And at the time, I didn't know what it was, but she was always stressing how important the connection between our people and Israel is, our ancestral homeland. And she, of my mother of blessed memory, instilled in us a strong passion to support the nation of Israel. So Israel Bonds is in fact the most effective way to do that. We've raised globally since October 7th an unprecedented amount of over $5 billion. And I am proud to be a part of that. I am proud to share that message with my community through my local advocacy and nationally to help people better understand that this is in fact the most effective way to not only help Israel survive, but thrive, to ensure its future and the future of our people.
And when people think about investing, they often think about numbers, they think about markets, but with Israel Bonds, there's a bigger picture. You know, how do you see investing in Israel as a way of supporting its future, not just financially, but more of as a statement of values?
Lidar, that's exactly what it is, a statement of values, a statement in my investment in the future of the nation of Israel. When I go to Israel, when I visit, I feel like I am part of it. I feel like I've invested in the streets and the lights and the buildings. I feel that I am part of Israel because of my investment in Israel Bonds. So not only is it, yes, a financial investment, but it is truly a connection with Israel that I feel is incredibly impactful, it is incredibly effective, and it is incredibly emotional. It is part of my advocacy as a Zionist to invest in the nation of Israel to make sure that it is thriving for the future generations.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you all for joining us. Today's conversation reminds us that growth takes courage and that investing in something bigger than yourself, whether it's identity, purpose, or possibility, creates impact that lasts. When it comes to Israel, that kind of investment can be deeply personal and deeply practical. At its core, it's about believing in a future grounded in resilience, innovation, and shared values. This is One on One. I'm Lidar Lazi. See you next time.
Well, 8 months ago, after the deadly rocket attack in the Druze community of Majd al-Shams, the families of 12 children killed are working to find purpose through spiritual and religious beliefs. Most media outlets will reshare their stories on the anniversary of the attack, but ILTV is dedicated to keeping their memories alive, no matter the time of year. ILTV Shosh Bedrosian reports from the border of Israel and Lebanon and speaks with the families.
The crisp air in Majd al-Shams is masked through the joy of children playing on the soccer field. It's a place that is filled with life and hope in this small Druze community that sits on the border of Lebanon.
When I was younger, I used to always dream of traveling and like living outside of Israel altogether. But now, I can't imagine, leaving this town.
20-year-old Mila Sha'ar has lived here her whole life, and this field has always been a central fixture in it.
The thing he loved the most in the world was soccer. If you see how many footballs he have at home, you'd go oh my God, he has so many.
Her youngest brother Milar was always decked out in soccer jerseys, wanting to become a professional player one day. That's why on July 27th, it was no surprise the 10-year-old wanted to spend the evening doing what he loved the most.
Since my grandma died, every Saturday we went somewhere, the whole family, my uncles, cousins, everybody. We were all there, we were having so much fun. And since morning, my brother was like, my friends are calling me, they're at the field, I want to go there. And I had work at 6 p.m. So when it came time that I want to leave, I told him, okay, I'll take you with me.
Sha'ar was the last one in her family to see Milar alive that day.
Hi everyone, my name is Milar.
As the funny, kind, and bright boy would soon be the youngest victim of a Hezbollah rocket attack. Just 18 minutes later, sirens sounded, and with no time to spare, the rocket directly hit the field while children played on it.
To be honest, when I want to go to sleep, as soon as I close my eyes, I started seeing that day. Like it all like start coming back to me.
Sha'ar said she couldn't reach her brother and found out he was rushed to the hospital.
When I made it there, I went to the room that he was in, and I saw like where his knee, like he had a big chunk, you know, like of meat, like gone. A few minutes later, when we went in there, he was unconscious. We couldn't talk to him. He was all bloody. And yes, just like a half an hour later, maybe, they told us that he passed away.
A light dimmed for 12 Druze families that day as the lives of their innocent children aged 10 years old to 16 were brutally cut short. A turning point in a deadly war that now thrusted the tight-knit ethnic Druze community into the center of it. With nowhere else to turn, the families began to rely on each other and created this shared space to grieve.
זה הבן שלי וזה אחיין. גדלו ביחד, כל הזמן היו ביחד.
Laith Abu Saleh lost his 16-year-old son Fajr and nephew Hazem in the attack.
מרגישים אותו דבר, אנחנו מאז ה-27 לשבעי. אני גאה בהם, ואנחנו מאמינים בגלגול נשמות, אז אני מאחל להם שיהיו במקומות יותר טובים מכאן וחיים יותר שמחים. ושיהיו במקום שיש בו יותר שלום מבו מהאזור שלנו.
The remnants of July 27th linger in Majd al-Shams. A mangled fence and the chaos from that day can still be seen and felt 8 months later.
What is it like for you to come back to the location where this happened? At first it was pretty hard, you know, to see like, when I see like what the missile did to the metal, and you know, like you can see the building there, like what it did to the building. Like I can't imagine what it did to the little bodies, you know.
The community has leaned on their spiritual and religious beliefs to make sense of the horrific tragedy from that day.
You found purpose in your brother's death through your religion. Yes, talk to me about it. Religious people from our town, they started telling us that God picked them one by one, 12 stars. He picked them for a reason, you know. As Druze, we say Alhamdulillah for everything. It means like thank God for everything, you know. So even when my brother died, I kept saying Alhamdulillah, thank God for everything. It's like everything happens for a reason. Everything has purpose in life.
How would Milar feel knowing that there's children still playing on this field today?
I think he is pretty happy. The life in this field hasn't died that day with the kids, you know. It's still going. They're still coming here. They're not afraid. It makes me feel so much better.
This story is part of a series we're putting together on the Majd al-Shams community. Tune in the rest of the week to watch the other stories. Our Majd al-Shams series continues. Historic changes are happening in the Druze communities in the Golan Heights, and they're hoping to be the bridge that creates peace in the region. After a group of religious Druze leaders from Syria entered the country last month for the first time in 5 decades, ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian has the full story.
When you're standing on this rooftop in the small Druze village of Kenya, you can nearly see the entire Upper Galilee and even into Lebanon. Mayor Wael Mogarbi says his little village in the mountain has been caught in the middle of Hezbollah's rocket attacks and Israel's response to it since October 7th.
Interception
Here,
of the Iron Dome, you could see.
In our area, I sit with them in my home, and I see the rocket and see all the fire.
But his village, the Druze village of Majd al-Shams, and cities in the Upper Galilee are trying to get their lives back on track as the economy took a major hit when people fled their homes because of the war.
The last 2 and 3 months, all the people, they back to work in Mitula and also in Kiryat Shmona. We feel free here.
Over the last few years and since the war started, Mogarbi says more Druze in the Golan Heights are starting to become Israeli citizens.
When I come to be a mayor in the local in Kenya, we have only 33 citizenship in Israel, from Israel. And now, do you know what's the number?
Tell me.
1,000. 1,000 citizenship, and every day, the people here in Kenya, they want to take a citizenship of Israel.
While there is a strong connection between the Druze communities inside of Israel, the Golan Heights, and in Syria, decades of living under different governments have shaped distinct identities. Israeli Druze communities are well integrated into Israeli society, with many of them serving in the IDF and in the public sector. Meanwhile, Druze in the Golan Heights have only recently begun weighing closer ties to Israel because of the changes in the region and likely after the Syrian civil war. Mogarbi believes there could be even more hope on the horizon after the fall of the Assad regime. When Israel captured the Golan Heights in 1967, Druze villages were divided by the new border, separating families and even cutting off communication between them for safety purposes. Although all were offered Israeli citizenship, only a minority of them took the opportunity.
First day when Assad left Syria, so I feel not good with our family there. I sent him a message, and a few minutes I have a call from him, from my family there.
Last month, even more history was made when Israeli Druze welcomed a delegation of 100 Druze religious leaders from Syria as they crossed the border into Majd al-Shams. It was their first visit back to Israel in 50 years as they spent time at religious Druze sites, but locals say it was all made possible after the fall of the Assad regime.
History here. We feel something changed in the Golan Heights and also in Syria. I think they go to do something for this area.
The high-profile Druze visit came at the same time Defense Minister Israel Katz announced a potentially new pilot program that could allow 40 Syrian Druze to work in agriculture in the Golan Heights, according to Ynet. Osama Ajami, a business lawyer, says it could be a turning point for the region as the agriculture industry took a hit during the war.
When we are talking about average salaries of $20 a month for the Syrian citizen, and here we are talking about like $1,500, the minimum salary. That will definitely lead to huge benefits for the both sides. They are part of us, and we want them to be better and be better also economically. And for me, it's like a historical moment.
Israeli Druze believe the Golan Heights could be a region that helps instill peace and stability in the Middle East if opportunities extend beyond its borders.
Now finally we are not at the end of the world. Maybe it will be a bridge for the other side, for the East, and for the global peace, or at least regional peace.
And on our final stop in the Golan Heights, for our series we've been bringing you all week long, we are bringing you a taste of Druze cuisine and how the community believes that they can be the bridge in making peace in the region. Let's take a look. When you step inside Nasiba's Druze restaurant in Bukata in the Golan Heights, you'll quickly realize the space is much more than eating.
How the food?
You're actually stepping into this Druze chef's home, not as a customer, but as her guest.
From the Golan Heights.
She invites guests into her home for a traditional meal, sitting on the floor and close to the fireplace. Local tour guide and Druze activist Maya Farhat brought us here to experience the authentic cuisine ourselves.
How do you want them to feel when they come into this space and they taste your food?
Special experience. To eat, also to speak about the truth.
Her Druze cuisine, inspired by her Syrian roots, is all handmade, locally sourced, filled with vegetables, and the crowd favorite, kebab. What you'll quickly learn about the Druze community is their incredible belief of spreading coexistence through their traditions and sharing them with others. That's why our final stop was to Vered's home.
This is the welcoming coffee. We offer you coffee and we offer you some sweet. If we share food together, it means we are family.
This is Maya's grandmother's original home.
This is Vered. She was a kid here. In 1967, the soldiers came for the first visit in the Golan. And for a surprise, they had also Druze soldiers with them. So they explained to them that everything was okay. There's no need to be frightened. Everything is fine. You can go back to your houses. We're gonna keep you safe. They even helped them taking back their belongings. And so Vered said her famous line. She said that if this is what Jewish people are people who are worth living with. I want my family to live in peace with this country. Her children and her belongings and came back and opened this house. Families like mine, families who accepted the citizenship later on, identified as Israelis, they were Boy Scouted. They weren't acceptable. They weren't able to go to rituals. It was so important to me to turn this weakness into power.
This is the traditional Druze home, right?
The houses here were built from basalt, how do you call it? Volcanic rocks.
The family preserved this home to keep Vered's message alive of peace and honoring and teaching their culture to others.
Would you like to become a Druze bride? This is the tarbush. It's usually with real gold.
Wow.
This is what they give for the bride, the gift. This is traditional. You will see this still in Sueda, in Syria.
And of course, moments to capture for eternity. Maya's father, Vered's son,
How should I offer you the coffee?
also taught us Druze coffee is not just a drink, rather a way to communicate.
Pick it in your right hand. If you shake the cup like this, I have to stop.
Wow.
That means for you enough. Shake it, please. Look, that's it. That's enough.
From the beautiful work of Druze artisans and artifacts they preserved, Maya and her father Talea believe Druze in the Golan Heights can be the bridge to peace in the Middle East.
We have to end wars. You know, what I believe that here in this crazy Middle East, it must be done. Should be like a treaty of life assigned by all the people in the Middle East.
I think everyone in the world should come and pay a visit to the Golan Heights to know what harmony is and what connection is. Druze people might be a minority, but it is the strongest minority in the whole world. They know how to build bridges between nations with other people on the other sides of the border.
עוד יותר, כן, עוד יותר, עוד יותר, כן. מזל טוב.
אתה הכי טוב. עוד יותר טוב.
אלבר, רק את הטוב! ועוד הנפקה מוצלחת לחברת ההייטק הישראלית.
אולי יצאו יותר טוב, משה.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, נחתנו זה עתה בנמל התעופה בן גוריון. ברוכים הבאים לישראל.
Israel is strong and growing. Now, more than ever, is the time to make Aliyah.
On October 7, I was here at the Nova Music Festival. I ran for my life, hid for 7 hours. Terrorists shot me twice. Thankfully, I survived. I'm still dealing with trauma, and I'm not alone. 3 million Israelis are in trauma. They need mental health care or physical rehabilitation. Wounded soldiers, families, and scared children.
Since 1912, Hadassah has been a life-changing force in Israel. Today, Hadassah has 2 world-renowned hospitals, pioneers breakthrough medical research, cares for youth, and has built the much-needed and largest rehabilitation facility in Jerusalem.
Thank you to everyone at Hadassah Hospitals. You've been helping me, and so many others. And a special thanks to one nurse, my mom. I love you.
On Rosh Hashanah, every bite of apple and honey holds a quiet prayer. May this year be better. May it be sweeter. But the blessing of sweetness stands on the edge of disappearing. Bee populations are collapsing from habitat loss and disease, taking with them something more than honey, a promise to future generations. Technion researchers are harnessing the power of science, racing to save our world's tiniest heroes before it's too late. They're creating AI-powered hives that protect and heal, and robotic bees that lend a helping wing. L'dor v'dor, from generation to generation, means caring for every link in the chain, keeping the sweetness of this holiday alive. Because tradition isn't just about the past, it's about the future we have the courage to create.
Some family secrets aren't locked in safes. They're locked in language. Your heritage is waiting in Hebrew. The conversations at dinner tables, the inscriptions on heirlooms, the letters that shaped your history. When you study with Rosen Hebrew School, you can discover your family's past. In months, not years, you'll connect with long-lost ancestors through language. Stop being a spectator in your own family story. We don't just teach Hebrew, we unlock the stories that made you, you. Which family mystery will you solve?
Now let's take a look at Psagot Winery, a unique winery that has had to adapt to the reality of war. Psagot not only maintained generations of superb winemaking, but also found a way to give back to the community in unique ways. Let's hear how they did it.
On the morning of October 7th, Psagot Winery, like the rest of Israel, came to a standstill. Life as we knew it ground to a halt, and we began the profound task of adapting to a reality intertwined with war and pain.
Everything stopped, all the parties, all the winemaking, everything stopped, and everybody went to take care of the state of Israel. Like all of Am Yisrael, it's been a very difficult time trying to figure out not just how to deal with the new reality, but how to help, how to get to work to try to help the state of Israel and the people of Israel every day since October 7th.
I believe that in such a difficult time, we cannot do the same thing we used to do before. Each one of us need to find the way how we remember what happened to us and what we are going to do that it will never happen again, and how to support our people that hurt so hard.
In the face of war's turmoil, Psagot Winery responded with heartfelt determination, venturing into new territories by opening a patisserie and a bridal dress shop. Their mission extended far beyond winemaking. It was about nurturing hope and solidarity. To honor and uplift communities devastated on October 7th, they introduced a special wine collection, channeling proceeds toward the rebuilding of these shattered neighborhoods.
Many people just need us, and it's very sad, it's very hard. We really try to give whatever we can. So this is the first mission, definitely to be there for the people who ever need help. We just help. We are not just a winery, it's a place for people to come celebrate, even if they had something bad in their family or they lost someone, we are here to support. We made this to use as this is very exciting. October 7th. All the money is going to support the settlements through the ILTV for the Gaza area. That we are in a very good connections now after everything that happened. We called the names of the places that were severely hurted, and we hope that we will come back and drink the wine there. We really want to drink it there with all the families in their homes. And this wine is a prayer.
The conflict between Israel and Hamas has inflicted widespread pain, destruction, and grief. Yet amid this turmoil, it has also fostered a profound sense of unity and hope. Time and again, we witness Israeli resilience, exemplified by Psagot Winery. As Psagot has demonstrated, each of us can contribute to supporting Israel. Together, we will strive towards victory.
We all need to be much more busy with giving and donation and putting our efforts in helping people. We all need to support and help each other. It's like there's no privilege, to enjoy now. It's not the time. We have that in a year or two, but now it's time. Everybody needs to be in the effort and to help a lot.
ILTV News, your source for Israel in English. Reporting from the ground where it happens, as it happens. An authentic, trusted voice in daily Israel news. Airing on 11 international TV channels and now launching a 24/7 Israeli news channel, reaching millions every month across all social platforms. Independent, real, powered by truth. We don't just report, we connect, thanks to a worldwide community that stands for truth. This is ILTV, your source for Israel in English.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We're bringing you the biggest headlines from Israel and the Middle East in just 5 minutes. I'm Caleb Ben David, and let's get into the top headlines of the hour. Hamas continues to delay in returning the remains of the hostages no longer living, drawing sharp criticism and warnings from both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Following the initial return of 4 bodies on Monday, last night a second convoy of 4 coffins crossed into Israel and was taken to the National Center of Forensic Medicine for identification. This morning, 3 of the 4 were confirmed. Uriel Baruch, 35, from Givon, who was seized and murdered at the Nova Festival, IDF soldier Tamir Nimrati, 20, from Nirit, and Eitan Levy, 53, a taxi driver from Bat Yam, taken while dropping off a friend at Kibbutz Be'eri. A security official confirmed that the 4th body returned to Israel last night did not belong to a hostage, but was a member of Hamas. Now, with these returns, 7 hostages' bodies have now come home since the deal took effect. According to Israeli officials and the families, 21 bodies are still to be brought back. Hamas has reportedly told mediators that it will return 4 more bodies later today. These latest identifications follows Tuesday's confirmations of the 4 others returned earlier. Guy Iluz, 26, seized at the Nova Festival. Bipin Joshi, 24, a Nepalese agricultural student taken from Kibbutz Alumim. Yossi Sharabi, 53, of Kibbutz Be'eri. And Captain Daniel Peretz, 22, an Army Corps officer killed in the fighting in Nahal Oz. All are now on their way to a proper burial. The families of the remaining hostages say the timetable being dictated by Hamas is unbearable and that the agreement must be honored in full. Vigils are continuing at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square and outside the Abu Kabir Forensic Center, with participants demanding the return of all hostages. Officials caution the next phase will be slower and messier, with complex searches amid rubble, but the promise remains the same: bring every one of Israel's hostages home. Back in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump warned Hamas to carry out its obligations under the agreement or face the consequences. Trump said Tuesday that Hamas has told his top aides that it will disarm and that the terror group could be dealt with violently if it refuses to do so. Trump also pressed the Palestinian terror group to follow through with its release of all dead hostages still being held in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu also weighed in, telling the U.S. channel CBS TV that if Hamas does not fulfill all of its commitments that it agreed to, including disarming and the demilitarization of Gaza, then all hell will break loose, this referring back to Trump's earlier comments. Meanwhile, the 20 freed hostages reunited with their families on Monday have now spent 2 days back in Israel after the tears, cheers, and hugs following more than 2 years in Hamas captivity. The last 20 living hostages were released by Hamas to Red Cross teams, then transferred to Israeli military control and then to hospital for a period of rehabilitation while meeting immediate family members and close friends. The released captives are beginning medical and psychological rehabilitation as the nation celebrates their return and the ceasefire deal moves forward. Among the touching moments, Guy Gilbert Dalal, greeted by his family in matching T-shirts printed "Guy is home, the heart is whole again," with his father wrapped in an Israeli flag. Other reunions included Avi Natan Or with his girlfriend and former hostage, Noah Argamani, and Omri Miran speaking to his young daughters via a video call before embracing them in person. Now, while Israel observes the ceasefire, Hamas gunmen have launched a bloody crackdown in Gaza, executing dozens of their own people on the streets. The documented public executions comes as Hamas tries to reassert its control over the Gaza Strip. And that ends this update on ILTV. Stay tuned for further updates on the hour. Or, of course, you can download our app just by scanning that QR code, which is now on your screen. Thanks for joining us. I'm Khalid Ben David.
It's finally happening. The silent majority in the West is waking up. For months, we've watched elites and professors and politicians twist themselves into knots excusing Hamas, Tucker Carlson, whilst ordinary people are just saying it but under their breath. And now, finally, it's beginning to end. This week, a clip went viral in which ordinary Westerners, not Israelis, are shouting down pro-Palestinian protesters. People are waking up. Today, we're breaking down why Palestine was never the cause, but just the symptom, and how Hamas is running a century-old playbook against the West. This is the fight of our generation, and we are going to expose it. This is the Meira K Show on JNS TV. Let's begin.
Take your Palestine off your own. You can take your Palestine off your own. You can take your Palestine off your own. You can take your Palestine. Take your Palestine.
I know it's a little inappropriate and not very polite, and it's not exactly the style we usually take here, but that line actually really matters. It wasn't in Tel Aviv, which is the big deal. It wasn't in Jerusalem. These aren't Israelis shouting back. These are ordinary Westerners, regular people who have had enough, finally saying it. Stick it up your you-know-what. And one moment actually says much more than 100 op-eds, because it shows that people are realizing what we've been saying from day one. This was never about Palestine. Palestine is just a symptom. Honestly, I think it's the first time I've seen a protest counter-protest in the West that wasn't just a bunch of people holding signs. No kumbaya circle, no cardboard slogans, no drum circles, none of this kind of boring protesting. It was actually just raw honesty. A bunch of guys drinking saying, screw you. You know what? I'll take that raw honesty over every other type of letter that has been sent in the last month. Raw honesty. People actually recognizing what is going on. So what do I mean when I say that Palestine is just a symptom? Think about everything happening right now. And I'm not talking just about Israel stuff. Things that feel disconnected, but potentially all add up to the same story. Transgender ideology being pushed onto little kids. Pro-Palestinian marches taking over Western capitals. Hostages completely ignored by the so-called human rights crowd. People saying things like rape is resistance, Sharia law in Afghanistan. Some big-name Western commentators like Tucker Carlson defending Hamas like it's some kind of win for the people to call Hamas a political group and not a terrorist group. On their own, each one of these things could potentially look random, but together they're forming a very clear pattern if you're looking correctly, because they're not isolated events. They're all connected with one source. And what is that source? It's a playbook, a literal step-by-step guide that you can find online on how societies get broken apart and taken over. Palestine, it's just one page in this book. Here's the thing. We're taught that conquest happened over the years with tanks and rockets and militaries, guns, etc. But that's not actually how it starts. You see, before Hitler had any power, Goebbels had propaganda. He spent years conditioning Germans to believe Jews were the enemy. It was only after Germans had woken up for months and years listening to their media telling them that the narrative is really that everything going on with the Germans is actually the Jews' fault. That when Hitler came into power and did a military takeover, all of that became possible because they were already brought in. Propaganda is the first weapon in destroying societies, not military takeovers. Today, TikTok has more potential to be powerful than any army. It's in everybody's pockets. Let's be honest, you could eliminate an entire Hamas battalion and win a war. But people aren't reading it, if people aren't seeing it online, and if they're watching a child crying in a filter somewhere in Gaza, guess what the majority of the people believe? They believe that child being killed or being starved over the realities of what actually is going on with Hamas. That's the brain war that we are losing every single day. But we've been losing it way before October 7th. That was the entire thing that was going on in the West. Here's a really important thing to think about. What's the most basic truth that every single child knows? That every human being knows when they're born? That there are boys and there are girls. That men and women exist and they're different. If you can get people to doubt even that, the most basic human instinct and biology, then you can get them to doubt anything. That's why the gender movement has exploded so much at the exact same time as radical Islam's global push, because they come hand in hand. Because once you confuse people at the deepest levels to make them not know what really is true, you can manipulate them into chanting for the people who would literally kill them, i.e., gays for Palestine. You don't need to be a genius to understand that gays for Palestine doesn't make sense. But if everybody's doubting the most basic things they know to be true, then you can convince them into believing any sort of absurd lie. It's all strategic, and it is right out of the playbook. So how does the playbook work? Every revolution, every takeover runs on the same formula. And there's a great show on Netflix that I highly recommend called How to Become a Tyrant or something like that. Watch it because it will change your mind and understanding of how societies are taken over. But let's start with the 5 steps. Number 1, exploit grievances. You want to find the country's pain points and blow them up. Number 2, mobilize support. Get people in the streets. Make it visible. Get your group to support you. Number 3, undermine authority. Convince the people that the government's illegitimate, that the people in control are the real problem. Number 4, capture control. Take over institutions, schools, councils, media from the bottom up. Because once they don't trust the top and the bottom up is starting to gain power, you can do something. You can come in, remove the power, and solidify your own power. Number 5, you lock it in so it can't be undone. That's it. It's 5 steps to break any sort of society. Lenin used it, Castro used it, Khomeini used it. It's been used everywhere. And now Hamas are using it with TikTok. It's nuts. Lenin had the famine that he was able to get people to freak out about and then come over and make it even worse. Hamas has casualty numbers. They, the people behind the murders, are able to convince the world of something that seems to make no sense. So first, let's break it down. An example of what it was used like in Russia. Okay? We start off with exploiting grievances. Lenin came in and promoted the ideas that there's war, deaths, famine, poverty, and it's all because of the leadership. They mobilized the workers, Soviets. They mobilized the people to try and fight back against the authority, which is step number 3. They made it out to seem that the Tsar is corrupt, illegitimate, and whilst there was truth, they got the people furious about it. And they managed to capture the unions and the media and the party structures. And then finally, they managed to get into power and solidify, rewrite the laws, and make the dictatorship permanent. It's a classic. And this is how Hamas is doing it at the moment, as is radical Islam. Number 1, exploit grievances. What is the Western society's thing that they cannot hate seeing more than anything? It's children being killed. Gaza, casualty numbers, pumped non-stop, stripped out of context, showcasing to the world, look what's happening in Gaza, the thing that you hate more than anything. Mobilize, get the people out there. 12,000 protests in America since October 7th, millions in the streets of Europe. Get the people riled up. Against who? The authority. Israel's apartheid. America's funding the genocide. The government, they are the real reason you are living under a tyranny. Number 4, capture. Get into the universities, the churches, the city councils, the media. Normalize this language of hating upon the enemy. Then You solidify. You become the mayor of New York. You bring in mayors to take over Europe. You get words like genocide brought into legislation. You take over the UN and the media and leadership. You buy the people out. But suddenly, Hamas is normalized. It is the same script. It's just a different group. And this ties right back to the hostage videos Hamas dropped right before Shabbat. 2 hostages, absolutely heartbreaking. But the videos, when they come out, it is never, ever, ever random. And I dare you, when a hostage video comes out, track the things that have led up to this because there's always a reason. When they put a video out, it means, number one, that they are anxious. And why are they anxious? Because Gaza City is collapsing. They're stronghold. You've seen the footage, right, of the buildings being exploded. They are terrified. They know that's it. We've reached the end. Israel is coming for them. What else is going on? Trump. The tweets. All hostages must return home, not just some. The Western pressure on Hamas is growing. It's moral clarity. And it's creeping back into the conversation. And Hamas doesn't like it. So they need to create the urgency of people freaking out by seeing the hostages, hoping that people will lose all rationale to fight for the thing that they believe is the most important that needs to happen today. And the last thing, the hostage videos dominate the Western media cycle. Albeit, you're correct, not all of the Western media, but Hamas, they dominate the language, the conversation, everything that we are talking about. Radical Islam has become the normal conversation around every table in Europe, in America, even if we don't realize it. Hamas has become talked about almost like it's an episode of Friends or your latest TV show, except for the fact that this is psychological torture. They're controlling us and they know exactly how to control the news cycle. And that begins with triggering information. Look, every society right now is at a different stage of this playbook. Israel is more at the beginning. They're trying to get us to hate our government, to hate each other, to undermine the authority. But they're also using raw terror against us. But in Europe, they're much later down the book. They're in the real late stages. 30 mayors in England aligned with Islamists, councils raising Palestinian flags, whole neighborhoods literally looking like Sharia zones. The need for people in England to fight back with everything that's going on right now with their flag protests and that being demonized, people being arrested for tweets against Islam, it's insanity. In America, it's caught somewhat in the middle. Some campuses are captured, some politics are paralyzed, but there is still a lot of reason. People are still able to see somewhat clearly. And Elon Musk, interestingly, has turned out to be one of the champions on this topic. No, not the topic of Hamas and hostages, but he has turned into basically a one-man blog on what's going on in Europe. He is constantly tweeting about the Sharia law stuff going on in England, about the crazy rapes, the immigrant issues. He is pointing out every single day what is happening in Europe, and it's time that everybody starts paying attention. Because again, remember, it's a different society, but it is the same playbook. And Lenin took power, as did Khomeini. And I'll tell you this, you don't want Sharia law taking over America. And it starts with people like Mamdani. So what do we do about this playbook? Well, first, Israel must remain militarily strong, because if the West collapses, Jews and every person in Western society is going to need a home that can defend itself. And so us being able to hold our own physically is going to be the most important thing. Which is why we cannot cave to demands of stopping the war, of pulling back. All of that is irrelevant. We have to tackle the real terror directly, physically, and show our strength. Second, we have to remember to not confuse the online world with reality. Protest chants shouldn't be able to stop the IDF. And everything that we need to build, the legislation to fight back against the ramifications of online narrative, need to be built out. Legal action, societal action, cultural action. We have to figure out how we push back against the narrative. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need our own playbook. They've been building out this strategy for 30, 50, 100 years. It's time we start building out that strategy. Stop letting them set the frame. Palestine is not our brand. It's theirs. And we don't have to fall into the rhetoric of Israel versus Palestine. It has never been about the small conflict between Israel and Palestine. It's about something much, much bigger, and we're on the forefront of it. We have to mock, humiliate, and expose radical Islam. Stop being afraid of words like Islamophobia. Do you know what Islamophobia means? It means an irrational fear of Islam. Islamophobia should not be the norm. I am not Islamophobic. I don't have an irrational fear of Islam. I have a very rational understanding that we need to be anti-Islam. Do you see, by the way, the genius in the marketing? Islamophobia versus anti-Semitism. Islamophobia, an irrational fear of ideas. Anti-Semitism, being against a type of person. They've managed to infiltrate their branding everywhere. It is not radical to say what everyone knows is true, and we have to normalize that. Normalize common sense. We double down on moral clarity, and this is the most important thing. You see, a society that knows what's right and wrong can't be manipulated. You cannot convince me that I am a man, and you will never succeed in doing that. But the second you manage to lose your own values, to not be certain on where you stand, they can infiltrate. We build ourselves strong mentally with values that are clear. We connect to our religion, to our society, to our nationalism, to our families. They will not be able to beat us. That's how we win. Strong defense, bold speech, and unapologetic values. So let's circle back. That one crude clip, stick the pro-Palestinians up your hole. It's crude, yes, and it's not polite. But sometimes the truth isn't polite. This was never about Palestine. Palestine is the symptom. The disease is radical Islam, allied with woke confusion. And the cure is unapologetic clarity. In Israel and in the West. Sometimes one crude line cuts sharper than an entire UN resolution. Honestly, I'd take one guy yelling, "Stick it up your hole," over the whole Security Council any day. At least one of them is telling the truth. We either fight this war of ideas now, or we watch our societies collapse one by one. Israel is holding the line. The question is, will the West wake up in time? I'm Ira Kay, and I will see you next time.
And moving on now to another story. As Rosh Hashanah ends, we reflect on new beginnings and fresh starts. And for thousands of women in Israel facing unplanned pregnancies, one organization, Efrat, provides hope, support, and real choices, helping them bring new life into the world with dignity. Joining us now is Neil Salomon, Executive Director of Efrat, to share how the organization is changing lives and how viewers can make a difference. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Neil, for viewers who may not know, what is Efrat's mission and why is it so important?
Efrat's mission is singular. It's to help pregnant women who are being pressured to terminate their pregnancy, usually for financial reasons. We're there to give them pause, to allow them to make a decision void of any external pressures. If it is finances that are hindering their choice, we're there to stand by their side. If they feel having another child is just too burdensome financially, we're there to help them.
Incredible. And so can you tell us a little bit about the people and effort involved in sort of collecting, providing, and delivering support ultimately to these women?
So Efrat's been around for about 47 years. We have volunteers in every single neighborhood of Israel, and that's really where we meet our women. We don't actually bring them in. Our headquarters are in Yerushalayim. We don't actually bring them into Yerushalayim, but from our headquarters go out over 3,500 packages of assistance every single month. To these women that need help, they get whatever they need. So we have volunteers that come and package it, about 8,000 volunteers that come through our warehouse every single year, and they send out the support to these women. At the point where the women live, a volunteer is there to care for her from being there for her emotionally, helping out with her children, helping out with the home, and making sure she gets everything she needs. What does she need? So what we've discovered, when it's financially driven, the fear of the additional expenses of another child or her first child are very daunting. So we tell the woman, listen, if you're afraid that you can't afford a crib, a carriage, basic supplies for the baby, we'll take care of that. What do you want? You're already pregnant. It's your choice. Don't let those finances hinder you. So we provide a crib, a carriage, a baby bath when the baby's born. And for 24 months afterwards, she gets to her door every single month diapers, baby formula, clothing for the baby as the baby grows up, so that shouldn't be what's holding her under pressure. Being a mother is not so easy. There's other pressures, but that's where we come in.
Amazing. And could you sort of share the scale of Efrat's impact? I mean, how many women and children have you supported over the years?
So to date, we can say that we've supported close to 90,000 women have their children in 47 years. So there are probably hundreds of thousands of Israelis walking around that are a direct impact of Efrat. But for us, every woman is the entire world. Every child that is born there is an entire world. And every woman, it's very important to note, because the political landscape in America around the abortion issue is so complicated. This is about giving women the actual choice. And every woman who needs the assistance of Efrat actually keeps her child. These children are not being put in foster homes. They're not being adopted. These are women who are choosing to have their baby. If they need support, we're there for them. And then they go ahead and they raise their children. So today, close to 90,000 women, 90,000 babies. We're at the rate of over 3,000 children that we are bringing into this world, 3,000 women that we're supporting every single year.
Incredible. And so how can our viewers help Efrat continue sort of giving hope, giving a future to mothers and to their children?
So the easiest way is, first of all, to go into our website, efrat.org or cribefrat.org, either way. And first of all, learn about us, understand the tremendous impact. I just want to share with you one story, just to highlight the impact. During the war, we felt that we had to meet some of the soldiers that are our children, but we didn't know who they were. So at the beginning of the war, we raised funds to give warm jackets to soldiers all throughout Israel, up north and down south. Now, Efrat is not a war-related organization. However, we needed to do something. And at that mission of I myself handed out these jackets, we actually met hundreds of our children who, when they saw the emblem on our car, because the jackets had to not be branded, when they saw the emblem of Efrat, they said, wait a second, you're Efrat. Unfortunately, we're called Efrat from the abortions. That's what they call us. They says, you know, our mother told us that when she was pregnant with us, it was Efrat that saved our lives. In the middle of this whole ordeal, we raised about 10,000 jackets. A certain man calls me up. He's from the south in Israel. And he says, you know, my son needs jackets you have to provide. I said, okay, but why are you being so aggressive? He was very aggressive on the phone. He says, don't you know who my son is? I said, no, I don't know who your son is. He says, you know, I had a store in the Shuk somewhere in the south of Israel, and we had 2 children, and my wife was pregnant with a 3rd, but we couldn't afford. The business wasn't doing well. We could barely feed our children that were alive. How can we now have another child? I told my wife she has to terminate the pregnancy. And out of nowhere, she said, like out of the sky, a woman appeared and said, listen, we know that you're pregnant. Somebody told us that you need help. We're here for you if you want. She said, what do you mean we're here for you if you want? And she just befriended her. If she wouldn't welcome us in, we wouldn't continue that discussion. But he says, you did continue the discussion, and this woman became my wife's best friend, and she wasn't willing to terminate the pregnancy. She really wanted this pregnancy. But I had no idea how I can provide. And I did not believe a word your organization said. You're going to come and provide me a crib, a carriage, 24 months of assistance. No way. You're probably a bunch of crazy liars that all you want is for my wife not to terminate the pregnancy. And that's just not what Efrat is. We want to restore the choice for a woman. If she chooses to terminate, that's her decision. If she chooses she wants to continue and she needs support, then there are organizations that are willing to support her. So says to me this father, you know who my son is? My son is your son. He's alive today because of the assistance that you provided. When I came home from the hospital, he says to me, I was crying. On the one hand, I was happy I had a new boy, but on the other hand, I did not know where to put his head to sleep. And as I drove back to my house, Outside was a brand new crib, a brand new carriage, and everything you promised, you provided. Today, he's in the K-9 unit, fighting in the tunnels in Gaza to protect the entire Jewish people. Aren't you going to provide for him jackets? And in that way, we understood that what we did 21 years ago, today is really populating the next new generation. So these women that needed us at that point in time continued. They might have a fourth child and a fifth child. Their lives continue. But when they needed us most, we have to be there for them. So if any of the listeners understand that impact, come onto our website, efrat.org, and understand that here we can truly make a difference. We can help a woman in her need, and we can build another Jewish family in the land of Israel.
Absolutely. Nir Solomon, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
אני כל הרגל שלי פצועה, כל הרגל שלי יש לי חירורים, אבא כל הרגליים שלו, כרמל גם. אמא, לא, את אמא עומדת למות, אני אומרת לכם.
Do you want to know how hell looks like on earth? Welcome to Kibbutz Be'eri. 2 years ago exactly, on the 7th of October, the Bachar family was in hell. A 3 meter on a 3 meter hell. Come with me and find out this unbelievable story of the Bachar family.
We were in the safe room. We were 4 persons in the safe room. It's me, Dana. I have 4 children. My old son, Rotem, he was in India in the same Nofar. The second is 19 years old. He's in the army.
And then you have Carmel and Hadar.
And Hadar.
And they were in the house with you and Dana.
6:30, the kibbutz with a lot of people. You know why? Because on October 6th, we just celebrate our birthday, the kibbutz birthday. It's been like 70 years. We are like 1,100 people, but in the same day, we were like 1,400. This is the master bedroom. We were here, and we start hearing the shooting. It's not the shooting, it's the thunder, like the missiles goes above us.
That whistle of the missile?
Yeah, a lot of them. So me and Dana here, and we are hear the rockets, and we know something happened. And
It's usual, right?
Yeah, it's usual. But in usual, there are 2 helicopters up, 1 drone, and after 5 minutes, a few missiles to Gaza, and that's it, it's done. This is the usual. But in the same day, it's not like that.
If I tell you in the world that the usual thing is that you hear rockets flying all over your head and then lands in your backyard, you can't say it's usual. This is missiles, rockets, literally sent from Gaza to Israel, to Kibbutz Be'eri. But the people here in Israel has gotten used to it. I promise you, you have no idea what we're talking about. So year after year, year after year after year, Hamas, the terrorist organization who ruled Gaza, kept sending missiles, launching missiles to Israel.
And I told Dana, okay, there is something wrong. And I told her, okay, let's go downstairs to see where's the children, and because our safe room is in the downstairs. This is Adar rooms, and we met right here. And this room, it's Carmel's room.
Carmel's room. Hadar, Carmel is here.
When we start to speak to them and say, okay, look what's going on, because all the rockets, and we start laughing on ourselves because we thought there was a rocket and, you know, like a zikukim, and came to Gaza to celebrate our birthday,
Fireworks.
and the fireworks, and we are and we're going out because we want to see the rockets. And we look up to the border, that's the border over there. So you can see all the rockets goes above all of.
That's Gaza over here. Just 4-kilometer walk. You know, if you can walk fast, it's 6 minutes per kilometer. Then you'd find yourself here within 20, 24 minutes in Gaza just walking. That's how it's close to Kibbutz Be'eri.
And around 10 minutes to 7, you start hear the shooting in the middle of the kibbutz. and they came in, and they start shooting all over. They running through our place and where we live, and they start shooting everyone. And the chat start talking about everything. Also, they shoot these people, they burn this house, they kill this one, and everything in the chat.
Wow.
And,
So while you're standing here, you're looking at the WhatsApp group and you're literally seeing them just saying,
Exactly.
this was killed, this was killed, this was killed, this was killed.
Absolutely.
In the WhatsApp group, you're getting a message, go to the safe room.
Yeah, go to the safe room because there's a terrorist in the kibbutz. Okay. You have to go to the safe room.
And that was 7:10.
We got into the house, we shield the house, and we locked the door. I told Dana and Carmel and Adar, okay, let's go to the safe room. And Carmel told me, wait, Dad. He went to the kitchen. He brought a few hardcore steel knife. He played with them like that. And he told me, Dad, don't worry. We're going to fight with them.
What's a safe room? A safe room, it is a bomb shelter. So in terms of when rockets are being launched from Gaza to here, you go to this safe room and plus minus you are protected even if a rocket falls very near the building that you are in, but only in a safe room. And that's why the Israelis on the 7th of October immediately ran to the bomb shelter, but then you told me that the bomb shelter became a trap.
A bomb shelter, you have to fight on the handle because you can't lock the bomb shelters. Because if somebody wants to help you, you just open the door.
You closed the door?
We're waiting, yeah.
So you closed the door and you waited here? Was this window
Yeah, we closed
shut?
everything.
Closed?
Yes, we closed the two.
Everything
there's
closed?
two panels.
Yes.
There's two panels. We
There's
closed
also
the two.
here-
There's the stock.
Yeah, of course,
yes.
it's shut because of that. But
So
you
we
have
closed everything. We also closed the glass.
So everything was closed?
Yes. Adar, she's sitting here, really close to the wall. And Dana, she's over there.
So Dana's here, Hadar is
Adar
here.
here.
You
Carmel,
are.
help me. It's around 8:30 in the morning. We hear the bell ringing. I'm standing right here. You know, like you are in stress, like you're holding like that. And Carmel helped me. And you hear the steps on the floor. You know that the terrorists, they're not coming to looking for us in the second floor. They come straight to the safe room.
They knew.
Because of course they knew.
They knew.
They knew because they killed the people up. That means the other in the neighborhood.
And they were in the safe house.
They knew that all the people in the kibbutz, they are in the safe room.
Targeting intentionally civilians, knowing that they are going to be in the safe room. This is a war crime.
And the terrorists, they came, they start, you know, like a hand fight, exactly the same. Yeah, they tried to
Arm
open,
wrestling,
and
you know?
absolutely. They tried to open and we close. They tried to open and we close. And suddenly one of the terrorists told me, "Iftach al-bab, open the door." And told me, "Go away, ruh, for him,
Ruh, go away. Yeah.
And he told me again, open the door. And I even say the second go, a shot through the door. We're holding the handle like that. And Carmel, my son, he's standing here.
And is he pushing
pushed
your hand
me
in and out?
About me, he pushed me. So this one, it's Carmel blood from his arm because this bullet took his arm, both arms. Carmel, you know, is with Arabic, so he cursed in Arabic. And he told me, he said, "Oh no, there's no Sri Lanka." Because it's supposed to be in December in Sri Lanka. He was a surfer.
Oh my God,
the only thing,
about it.
yeah, the only thing he thought about, it's about the sea, his surfboard,
He's a surfer,
and his surf. Yeah, he was a surfer. He was a great surfer.
That shot you in the arm and in your legs.
In my legs.
And you keep going.
I keep standing on that. The right leg is died. There's nothing left in the right leg. The left one, you feel something happened to her. You don't know exactly what happened.
Like it's
like
burning.
It's like, you know, when you go to the gym, you feel your muscle a bit
Yeah.
strong. That's how you feel.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
And I saw, because I'm really recognized like that, I look to the floor, and I saw a few tears of blood on the floor. And I talked to myself, I said that, but I'm all right. And I saw that these bullets took my arm and the blood go from my arms. So a few seconds later, I collapsed and fell into
What time that was?
9:30. 30 minutes later, there are heavy smoke getting.
Around 10 o'clock?
It's around 10 o'clock. It's a heavy smoke.
Where the heavy smoke is coming from?
They brought everything. In Israeli, it was a system. First of all, they shot. Second, they burn. And later, when you jump out from the window, they kill you outside in the backyard. It's a system. There's 150 houses like that, or more than that.
אני לא יודעת איפה אמא נפצעה, אבל היא היחידה שכמעט מאבדת את הכרה, היא וכרמלה. אני ואבוד קצת בסדר, אני הכי בסדר.
Hamas terrorists, the Nukhba unit, which is the elite unit of Hamas, they came first, they did what they did, they left to another house. So now you're telling me that the civilians...
Yes, they gave the mission to other people, burn them.
And they're not like part of the Nukhba, they're literally
I don't know
Gazans.
who are they, but maybe it's not the Nukhba, because the Nukhba, they got the weapon and they go to kill the other people. But they know that, okay, if there is a heavy smoke in the safe room, you have to jump out from the window. And the Nukhba, they're waiting for you here, while they're not waiting here.
Gotcha.
And when you jump out, they kill you there.
Through that massacre on the 7th of October, not only official Hamas members, terrorists, took part of it, but also civilians took part in the massacre. And there's countless evidence to that, by the way, which you can see all over the social media of civilians, Gazans, who came to the settlements here in southern of Israel and literally took part of the massacre. They start burning, smoke is coming in.
Smoke coming in, a lot of smoke, a heavy smoke. Everything is closed. We open just the glass window. That's it. We open that one, and you can't breathe. And when you can't breathe anymore, I told them, okay, you have to take the pots of Bebka with the pee and the towel, and with the blood, it's become like a glue.
Yeah.
And we put it on the face. You can breathe through it. It's easier, but it's not good for a long time.
So wait, you
because
breathe pee and blood?
Of course. You want to survive, you have to.
What happened after that?
The terrorists, they decide to open the window because they saw that we didn't jump out. They decide to open the window. They put a big bombs on the window. If you go for the other side, you can see it. And they explode this fucking window.
זרקו לי רימון, ברגל יש לי חור, אני מנסה להחזיק את זה, יש לי ברגל 5 חורים. זרקו עלינו רימונים, ירו בנו.
When they explode this one, the right one stuck in a frame is not moved. But the second one moved like 10 centimeters to the side.
So there was like a gap?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a gap. So for us it was good. Because
smoke is getting out.
Absolutely. The hair comes from the door, and the smoke get in, go up, and go down. That's how it's going. So I'm looking around, so we are still alive. We are all right. But that's the good things. The worst things, we got 3 grenades inside. And when they throw the grenade hit the wall here and fell into the drawer.
That's the first explosion here, you can see it. That's the second explosion. And what about the third grenade? It didn't explode. So you had with you a grenade, live grenade, that did not explode.
Yes. You feel like your ears in the plastic bags. That's how you feel. I'm looking around, so we are still alive. So all the shrapnels, you can see all over, all the shrapnels go up, most of them. And the terrorists, they took like a metal stick, like a magnet stick, they put on the grenade, and they wrapped the grenade with metal balls, screws, and needles.
By the way, this is another act of a war crime, yeah?
And Ada, she told me, at the same time, that's not a real grenade. I tell you, why you say that? Because she's 13. And she told me because I got a lot of screws in my legs. And now we are bleeding, we are 3 bleeding in the safe room. Dana, until now, she's all right. And I'm, bleeding from my legs and in Carmel, but it's all right. But we were on the floor. We hear 2 shots, and Dana told me, I can't breathe. Adar, she tried to clean it a little bit. And she told Adar, it's done. And she told us, I don't have nothing for nobody in this world, and she died.
Avida, you knew that your wife died.
Yes.
And you are without legs, with a bullet also in your arm, with a kid who is injured in his arm, they're trying to keep him alive. And you have a daughter that was also hit from shrapnels. And at this time, you realize that you lost your wife as well. Yeah. Yet you still have the power to tell your daughter,
Mom, she's all right. She's not suffering anymore. She died. We have to keep him alive. Around 4:30, Carmel, he knew that go out for the safe room. He knew that. Around 5 o'clock afternoon, Carmel, he got his short breath and he died.
כרמל, תישאר איתנו. אל תעצום עיניים. אמא, לא תישאר איתנו.
Before he died, he told me, Dad, don't forget. So burying me with the surfboard. And Adar, she saw me, and she told me, Dad, don't leave me alone. Because she saw me, I'm almost gonna die here. And she called 911 again. My dad almost gonna die, what I'm supposed to do. And the 911, they record everything.
בסדר. איפה היריות? הן מתחילות מהאגן עצמו או מהרגליים למטה?
Around 7:30, 7:15, the commander of Yalom, he came to this window. He took his flashlight, looked into the safe room, and told the other guy, there is a massacre here in the safe room. So if you want to live next to them, you can't. I think we give them any money, any opportunities. They don't want to kill us. I think they want to live like us, but they don't. They don't want to live like us. They don't want me here. They want to take my land. It's not about something about religious. It's nothing. It's about territory and land. That's it.
you were in hell. There's no other definition to what you went through on the 7th of October. There's a lot of people around the world that either they deny what happened here, and clearly we can see the evidence is countless. Yeah? And of course your story as a first eyewitness that went through hell. What do you have to say to the world for those who are right now supporting the terrorist organization Hamas, literally advocating and echoing the narrative of Hamas?
We have to know that the Islamic here next to us, it's really want to kill us because our land. We can see the Palestinian here, and if you move to Europe, I'm sure it's going to be there also. And we have to keep on ourselves. And for the Jewish nation, I think we have to be in Israel. This is the only state that we got, and we have to keep on it for many generations forward.
That for them, there's no such thing as, let's have a dialogue. They don't think about, maybe let's hear the other side. There's no freedom of speech. There's also no freedom of religion. That's a different topic. But the bottom line is, you do not have dialogue with them because they don't believe in dialogue. They have their own way. You're either with them or against them. If you're with them, your life might be saved, But if you're against it, for sure, you're dead.
On October 7, I was here at the Nova Music Festival. I ran for my life, hid for 7 hours. Terrorists shot me twice. Thankfully, I survived. I'm still dealing with trauma, and I'm not alone. 3 million Israelis are in trauma. They need mental health care or physical rehabilitation. Wounded soldiers, families, and scared children.
Since 1912, Hadassah has been a life-changing force in Israel. Today, Hadassah has 2 world-renowned hospitals, pioneers breakthrough medical research, cares for youth, and has built the much-needed and largest rehabilitation facility in Jerusalem.
Thank you to everyone at Hadassah Hospitals. You've been helping me, and so many others. And a special thanks to one nurse, my mom. I love you.
עוד יותר, כן, עוד יותר, עוד יותר, כן. מזל טוב.
אתה הכי טוב. עוד יותר טוב.
אלבר, רק את הטוב. ועוד הנפקה מוצלחת לחברת ההייטק הישראלית.
אולי תהיה יותר טוב משם.
גבירותיי ורבותיי, נחתנו זה עתה בנמל התעופה בן גוריון. ברוכים הבאים לישראל.
Israel is strong and growing. Now, more than ever, is the time to make Aliyah.
On Rosh Hashanah, every bite of apple and honey holds a quiet prayer. May this year be better. May it be sweeter. But the blessing of sweetness stands on the edge of disappearing. Bee populations are collapsing from habitat loss and disease, taking with them something more than honey, a promise to future generations. Technion researchers are harnessing the power of science, racing to save our world's tiniest heroes before it's too late. They're creating AI-powered hives that protect and heal, and robotic bees that lend a helping wing. L'dor v'dor, from generation to generation, means caring for every link in the chain, keeping the sweetness of this holiday alive. Because tradition isn't just about the past, it's about the future we have the courage to create.
Some family secrets aren't locked in safes. They're locked in language. Your heritage is waiting in Hebrew. The conversations at dinner tables, the inscriptions on heirlooms, the letters that shaped your history. When you study with Rosen Hebrew School, you can discover your family's past. In months, not years, you'll connect with long-lost ancestors through language. Stop being a spectator in your own family story. We don't just teach Hebrew, we unlock the stories that made you, you. Which family mystery will you solve?
A stunning 1,600-year-old mosaic has just been unveiled in Israel's south, offering a rare glimpse into Byzantine life in the Negev. More on this from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
A remarkable piece of history has just been revealed to the public in Israel's southern region. For the first time, a 1,600-year-old Byzantine-era mosaic is on display at the Merchavim Regional Council in the western Negev. The mosaic was uncovered more than 3 decades ago near Kibbutz Urim, on the edge of the ancient site called Kirbat Be'er Shema. Until now, it has been kept hidden and protected underground. Earlier this week, the Israel Antiquities Authority and the Israeli Ministry of Heritage officially unveiled the restored mosaic, following months of careful conservation work. Now installed in the council's headquarters, the colorful artwork gives a vivid glimpse into the life during the Byzantine period. The mosaic features 55 circular medallions filled with intricate scenes, everything from hunting and farming to mythological figures, exotic animals, and baskets of fruit. Experts describe it as a masterwork created by a highly skilled artist, using tiny stones in many colors, along with bits of glass and pottery for added richness. Archaeologists say the mosaic was originally part of a large monastery that operated a wine production center. Excavations revealed a wine press and warehouses filled with clay storage jars made on the site. The settlement itself lay along a major ancient trade route, once used by merchants moving spices and goods between Halutza and the port city of Gaza. The roads likely marked the transition from desert to more populated regions and served as a safe haven for travelers seeking protection from raids. Officials hope the newly unveiled mosaic will become a cultural and tourism highlight, especially for the Gaza envelope region, which of course has seen its share of challenges. They say showcasing historical treasures like this one can help breathe new life into the area.
And now moving on, for decades, Jewish National Fund USA has been investing in the northern part of Israel, working to bring thousands of people back to the region. Now, one of their new unique ventures will bring a totally new skill set to the region with a culinary institute. Last week, I sat down with CEO Russell Robinson about what this could mean for Israel.
If you look out, close your eyes, open them, you're in Tuscany. This is a magnificent, beautiful nation, and here's a magnificent, beautiful area of the country.
The breathtaking views of northern Israel can oftentimes make you feel like you're in another part of the world. When you are here on Kibbutz Gonen, tell me what this feels like for you as someone who's so involved in making sure people do come back to the north.
I see the beauty and the life and the tranquility, all the things that maybe you don't use in words in describing anything in Israel sometimes. You can literally hear cars driving from miles away because it's so quiet. The animals and the beauty of the area and the tranquility of it. And you see from the people there's a spirit of Halutzim. These are people that helped build this nation from the very beginning. And then you get to see that, you know what, when you plant, you can see the fruits of your labor.
For Jewish National Fund USA CEO Russell Robinson, he's had a vision to continue to turn the north of Israel into thriving communities before and after October 7th.
For us, it was always about go north, bringing people up north. October 7th and the war, we had to, shift, but not change. We had to pivot, but we're still heading forward. And we're heading forward that we are bringing people back home. Bringing people home and bringing people to the region with new opportunities and putting it on the map. That's the goal of JNF USA. And here on Kibbutz Gonen, in the upper eastern Galilee, there's a vision to bring something new to the table, literally speaking. Here in Kibbutz Gonen, we started something of a reimagination 7 years ago to build the Galileo Culinary Institute, the finest institute in the world. Now that's a big statement. You got Cordon Bleu, you got CIA and America Culinary Institute of America. How could we claim to have the finest? I'll tell you how. They're fine opportunities to learn French cooking. Overlooking the vast farms in the distance and ridge of Kibbutz Gonen sits the soon-to-be JNF's Galilee Culinary Institute. This building will have our bakery. This building will have our winery. It'll have a beer brewery. You're going to be utilizing the beauty of Israel and the experience of Israel is part of the whole culinary teaching experience. So it's not that you come here and you're going to learn only because what we're going to teach you. You're going to learn from everything that goes on here throughout Israel. Robinson gave us a tour of where the 12-month program will take place, which will soon transform into all different types of culinary spaces. So you've just walked in the Galileo Culinary Institute restaurant. This is where the chefs from all over the world that have come here to teach, students who have come from all over the world have come here to learn. JNF USA also established brand new dorms on the kibbutz for culinary students to live in. Robinson met with crews to tour the nearly finished product, where he was able to see the sleek designs and eco-friendly spaces. So every dorm will have a little kitchenette, refrigerator, a kitchenette, a microwave. Okay, and every bed has storage underneath as well. JNF USA envisions the Culinary Institute to be instrumental in bringing more life to the ever-growing city of Kiryat Shmona and its surrounding communities. With their investment in entrepreneurs, medical facilities, to pre-military programs in the region and more, the nonprofit is hoping the area expands with each opportunity that's created. Israel tomorrow is what Israel's all about, a light up to nations, and it's going to be that place that people are going to say, wow, I should have bought a home there before.
What an exciting moment to be on Kibbutz Gonen, seeing so much to come for them.
ILTV News, your source for Israel in English. Reporting from the ground where it happens, as it happens. An authentic, trusted voice in daily Israel news. Airing on 11 international TV channels and now launching a 24/7 Israeli news channel. Reaching millions every month across all social platforms. Independent, real, powered by truth. We don't just report, we connect. Thanks to a worldwide community that stands for truth. This is ILTV, your source for Israel in English.
Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. We're bringing you the biggest headlines from Israel and the Middle East in just 5 minutes. I'm Caleb Ben David, and let's get into the top headlines of the hour. Hamas continues to delay in returning the remains of the hostages no longer living, drawing stark criticism and warnings from both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Following the initial return of 4 bodies on Monday, last night a second convoy of 4 coffins crossed into Israel and was taken to the National Center of Forensic Medicine for identification. This morning, 3 of the 4 were confirmed. Uriel Baruch, 35, from Givon, who was seized and murdered at the Nova Festival. IDF soldier Tamir Nimrati, 20, from Nirit. And Eitan Levy, 53, a taxi driver from Bat Yam, taken while dropping off a friend at Kibbutz Berry. A security official confirmed that the 4th body returned to Israel last night did not belong to a hostage, but was a member of Hamas. Now, with these returns, 7 hostages' bodies have now come home since the deal took effect. According to Israeli officials and the families, 21 bodies are still to be brought back. Hamas has reportedly told mediators that it will return 4 more bodies later today. These latest identifications follows Tuesday's confirmations of the 4 others returned earlier. Guy Iluz, 26, seized at the Nova Festival. Bipin Joshi, 24, a Nepalese agricultural student taken from Kibbutz Alumim. Yossi Sharabi, 53, of Kibbutz Berry. And Captain Daniel Peretz, 22, an Army Corps officer killed in the fighting in Nahal Oz. All are now on their way to a proper burial. The families of the remaining hostages say the timetable being dictated by Hamas is unbearable and that the agreement must be honored in full. Vigils are continuing at Tel Aviv's Hostage Square and outside the Abu Kabir Forensic Center, with participants demanding the return of all hostages. Officials caution the next phase will be slower and messier, with complex searches amid rubble, but the promise remains the same: bring every one of Israel's hostages home. Back in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump warned Hamas to carry out its obligations under the agreement or face the consequences. Trump said Tuesday that Hamas has told his top aides that it will disarm and that the terror group could be dealt with violently if it refuses to do so. Trump also pressed the Palestinian terror group to follow through with its release of all dead hostages still being held in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu also weighed in, telling the U.S. channel CBS TV that if Hamas does not fulfill all of its commitments that it agreed to, including disarming and the demilitarization of Gaza, then all hell will break loose, this referring back to Trump's earlier comments. Meanwhile, the 20 freed hostages reunited with their families on Monday have now spent 2 days back in Israel after the tears, cheers, and hugs following more than 2 years in Hamas captivity. The last 20 living hostages were released by Hamas to Red Cross teams, then transferred to Israeli military control and then to hospital for a period of rehabilitation while meeting immediate family members and close friends. The released captives are beginning medical and psychological rehabilitation as the nation celebrates their return and the ceasefire deal moves forward. Among the touching moments, Guy Gilbert Dalal, greeted by his family in matching T-shirts printed "Guy is home, the heart is whole again," with his father wrapped in an Israeli flag. Other reunions included Avi Natan Or with his girlfriend and former hostage, Noah Argamani, and Omri Miran speaking to his young daughters via a video call before embracing them in person. Now, while Israel observes the ceasefire, Hamas gunmen have launched a bloody crackdown in Gaza, executing dozens of their own people on the streets. The documented public executions comes as Hamas tries to reassert its control over the Gaza Strip. And that ends this update on ILTV. Stay tuned for further updates on the hour. Or, of course, you can download our app just by scanning that QR code, which is now on your screen. Thanks for joining us. I'm Khalid Ben David.
Hello and welcome back to the ILTV podcast. I'm Mayan Hoffman, executive editor of ILTV, and we're so happy to be here again with our viewers and our listeners. I have with me today a very interesting and special guest, Ambassador Eitan Naeh, the former ambassador to Bahrain. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure.
Oh, of course. Now, you just got back from Bahrain a couple of weeks ago. Now that you're back on the grounds, would you be willing to share what it was really like in the country, especially since October 7th? I mean, when you watched the news, it didn't feel like the country was very supportive of Israel.
So two things. First of all, obviously, we were all surprised. Us Israelis, obviously, over there, and the Bahrainis too. How did it happen to you, Israelis? There were we received some messages of support, condolences, sorry for what happened. But very quickly, as we turned the page and went into Gaza, that of course has changed. Bahrain is the smallest Arab country, and of course part of the greater Arab world and the Islamic world. And of course, public opinion has very mixed feelings. Especially when it comes to the Palestinians or to the Palestinian issue, which is obviously a very sensitive topic, very strong identification with the issue, whether it's on religious terms, national terms, ethnic terms. So, of course, we saw a lot of criticism, some boycotts, not official, but certainly businesses who've been boycotted, even American businesses. So it has been difficult, but that's to be expected. We are, after all, in an Arab country in a very young, new relationships.
Did you feel uncomfortable at different points?
I wouldn't say uncomfortable, but that's, I think, very subjective to
right.
what one expects, what one is doing. No, I think that when the war started and after when we were asked to leave the country by Jerusalem and come back to Israel, all channels were still open. So we were talking to whoever we needed to talk, to decision makers, to make sure that information, briefings, and dialogue continues.
Wow, and then eventually I know that everybody went back to their positions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you met regularly with the Crown Prince and with the leadership in the country, including the last week before you left the country. The last visit was actually published. We'd spoken about it with some different hats by the Royal Court. But for much of the last couple of years, any meetings that you did have really were not put out there in the public. I guess they were kept quiet for the reason that there was concern about Israel. So what changed in that final meeting, and what was that final message that the Crown Prince wanted to put out through you?
I think the main message is that relationships endured. One of the most difficult tests since the Abraham Accords were signed. Mm-hmm. And that's an important message. It's not something to be taken for granted. That relations endured, not only endured, they want to continue to develop it. And in one of my conversations with the Crown Prince, and with others actually, when I said, I came here to build relationships, friendly relationships, they said, well, that's that part of your service has ended, and now we are about to, we are in a period of developing relationships.
Oh, wow, okay.
So building is over, now we are developing. So we are on to the next stage. And I think that is the message. And I think that we start to see it now. It's not just my last meeting with the Crown Prince that was published. My successor, Sami Ravel, who just gave the copy of his credentials to the foreign minister, that meeting was published, not without public reaction, but still. So I think that the relationships see resilience, and that's a very important message.
And certainly then I guess what you're also saying is it seems like the leadership, even if some of the people are struggling, as you mentioned, there was some response to the credentials, but the leadership was still very willing to put that out there because their leadership knows that that relationship will continue to develop.
Israel is still an important country, and it's usually what I used to say to my interlocutors. I said we might be part of the problem, but we're also certainly a very big part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And the dialogue and relationship should continue, and they have continued really throughout the war.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about the war, Trump just this last week brought up again, this was leaked, the Gaza Riviera plan that involves, some new entity, some Palestinian leadership that's going to potentially take over and actually join the Abraham Accords, of which, remember, in 2020 it was Bahrain, of course, that you were there. You were also the UAE, the United Arab Emirates to begin with, the first country to sign on, Morocco. And, now we're thinking about maybe this other entity. Do you see a vision where more Arab nations are actually going to join the Accords? Do you believe in that vision at this stage?
I think they will eventually. I think that they see the merit of having a relationship with Israel. Everybody who wants to be involved in securing the region, in making sure that the region will prosper, that will see economic growth, trade, east-west, west-east, needs relationship with Israel. It's a matter of time. And, of course, the right timing, but it will happen.
Do you have an idea of who might be next? I mean, we keep talking about Saudi Arabia, but do you think that it is Saudi or maybe someone else?
I'm sure it will be Saudi at a point of time. I cannot guess and won't gamble, but I think that's certainly on the table and in the cards. A few things have to happen before. But it won't be just Saudi. I think there are some further away countries that would establish diplomatic relationships with Israel. It was on the cards, on the table before. I'm sure it will come again. Who will be the first? When? That I cannot say. I don't know. What are some of the other countries that you're thinking that are on the table, even if they're not first, second, or third? Certainly some Arab countries, maybe from the Islamic group of countries. We have good relations with some. Mm-hmm. I think that circle will grow. I'm sure of that.
Give me an example.
Possibly. I don't know. I don't want to give names. I don't want to create any expectations, but I'm sure that some of the big countries in Africa, further away, more countries will establish relationship with Israel.
Fascinating. Now, over the course of the war, the Crown Prince really stressed the de-escalation in Gaza and the civilian protection. Obviously, there was real concerns with the humanitarian crisis that was going on in Gaza, whether or not the war was necessary or not. But he also was very careful to always call for the return of the hostages and for Hamas to let the hostages go and to be humanitarian to them as well. From your conversations, what do you think that the country wants Israel to do? If Bahrain could have its way, what would be happening in Gaza right now? Do you get a vibe that the Palestinian issue is important to the country?
The Palestinian issue is important to every Arab, Muslim, and beyond. Of course, we see that, we hear it from leadership, and of course from the people. It's part of their identity. It's part of what they believe in. That's one, and that's.
But is that really true? I mean, I'm asking because I think about like how right before October 7th, Netanyahu had been at the GA, the General Assembly in the UN, and he'd spoken about potential normalization with Saudi Arabia, and there was all this talk and many reports that maybe there wouldn't have to be a Palestinian state or the path could be very loose, and that the Saudi leadership had come out and said, well, Palestinians are important, but we'd rather have normalization more than we need a peace deal for the Palestinians or a Palestinian state. That we don't really know. I mean, certainly I don't know. It's all from what we read in the newspapers. Maybe you know more from the inside. Was that true? I mean, is it possible that Palestinians are important in theory, but not necessarily the important question for most of these countries?
I wouldn't belittle the importance of the Palestinian issue to Arabs, Muslims at all. I mean, it is an important issue. It comes out in every conversation.
Interesting.
That's one. How to solve and what exactly will be the details, I think that at least my interlocutors, I leave it for Israel and the Palestinians and maybe other bigger actors. They want to see a solution. They have delineated certain lines of how they would like, but they wouldn't dictate a certain formula. They want to see a solution. And I think I wouldn't take every word that was that we had 2 or 3 years ago and then reapply it now and say okay.
Right. Well, the world has changed since October 7th.
Things have changed, but I think that clearly they want to see a solution. Clearly, everybody sees it as a point of instability. I haven't heard anybody blaming Israel for it.
Ah, okay.
But they want Israel to take part and to be willing to solve the problem. I usually said, it takes two to tango. Our hands was extended for peace all the way to from 48.
Right.
It's within our
Before.
Charter of Independence, Declaration of Independence. Our hand is stretched out for peace, even in the midst of war. And that is still true, but obviously, and certainly after October, that has to come first with the security. It's a precondition. It's page number 1.
Yeah, for sure. Did you have any discussion with the leadership in Bahrain about what Gaza would look like, what role a country like Bahrain might play in a future solution for the Gaza Strip?
Actually not. I don't think, again, they didn't go into detailed conversations with me about the day after. Certainly would like to see a day after. Certainly would like to see Israel, not just the Palestinians, but Israel living in peace with its neighbors, and security. And there was an emphasis on security.
Oh, interesting.
There is a clear understanding, I think, post October 23, that what Israel is seeking is security. And that's as I said before, page number 1. Without it, what's peace? A piece of paper.
Right. But when you talk about security, I mean, does that just mean demilitarized Palestinian state? Does that mean buffer zones around Gaza? What does that look like, security for Israel?
Again, not in my
Israel?
conversations with my Bahraini interlocutors, Bahraini leadership, any such details were touched upon. That is certainly, as they say, not for them. They want to see a solution. They want to see easing up of the humanitarian situation. But I think these things are already happening. So it's really, Bahrain is a peaceful country, and what they want to see is peace, security, and prosperity that will benefit all, and certainly is part of the national security.
For sure. I mean, and certainly we've seen an increase in some of those things, whether it's trade or a collaboration in some departments, and definitely before October 7th, potentially people were more willing to go those routes. But there was one example of real coordination in the region, and two examples, and that was really the 2 attacks by Iran against Israel in April and in October, right, of the previous years, where they launched so many rockets at us, and the entire region collaborated under the umbrella, of the United States. We spoke a little bit about this in the past. Tell me what role Bahrain, if at all, if you can talk about it, played in any of this, but more than just specifically the country that you were in, if you could talk more about what it meant that all of these countries with the United States were willing to collaborate on behalf of Israel. I'm not sure we would have seen that in 2020 before the Accords.
So I'll correct you a little bit.
Okay.
I think that countries act upon their own interests, defending their own interests.
Oh, you think it was their airspace?
Their own airspace, sovereignty. And what happened when the Iranians started to send rockets, missiles, ballistic missiles, UAVs over the skies of different countries, of course, they ordered to protect their own sovereignty. Of course, in order to coordinate it, you needed a bigger actor, and that role was played by the U.S.
By CENTCOM,
NAVCENT, the Navy, U.S. Fifth Fleet. So that happened, and under the American umbrella, these things happened. But every country that does act to protect its own national interest. So I don't think that they all came to collaborate to protect Israel. That was the result.
But they still collaborated, and they collaborated with Israel.
They collaborated. I wouldn't call it collaborated. There certainly was a degree of cooperation, not just with Israel. Countries between themselves, of course, under the American umbrella. But I think that was an example of what countries in the region can do when they come together. And I'm not just talking about defense and protection. It's a very interesting issue, but I'm talking about trade.
Okay.
Opening trade routes, which I think is the most interesting thing. And personally, this is one of the things that I took most pleasure in handling when I was in Bahrain, opening trade channels, developing economic relationships. When you are in the Gulf, you see the potential.
So tell me a little bit more about that potential, what routes we're talking about.
We're talking about east-west, India, to the Mediterranean, and then of course from the west to the east. Trade is going to grow. Look at the countries like India, South Korea, of course Japan, and then Vietnam, other countries. So those trade routes. Not just trade, it's anything from information, fiber optics. You see energy routes. A lot of the energy from the Gulf goes east. So that alone brings a lot of prosperity. It's not just the goods. It's not just supply channels.
It's like
supply chains.
diamonds, or
It's logistics. It's everything. It's a movement of people. Today, if you want to go east, you can go via Dubai, Abu Dhabi. In the past, quite a few Israelis also went via Manama when there were direct flights, which I hope will be resumed soon. Yeah. All that brings prosperity. All that brings tourism, brings trade and investments.
Can you talk a little bit about those trade numbers? I mean, did you see that they have gone up consistently over the last several years that we've been working with Bahrain?
They've gone up somewhat. Numbers are still very low.
Well, I know it started at zero. We had no trade with Bahrain before the Abraham Accords, from what I understand.
Of course.
So it's easy, I guess, the first year to increase.
It goes up and down. It's really demands and supply, Corona, which of course hurt a lot the supply chains. Prices, what's happening at the Red Sea, Houthis.
Right.
But I see potential.
Yeah, and do you see Bahrain, I know it's like the smallest, as you mentioned, Arab country. So compare maybe that trade with Bahrain, the UAE, Morocco, the three core partners. UAE is leading, I'm assuming, if I remember the numbers correctly, Morocco, then Bahrain. But talk a little bit about the differences between them and how, as a collective, if you think it is, that it's impacting our economies.
So there are two hubs in the Gulf, and I think that Dubai, Abu Dhabi are the ones we are talking about when we talk about direct trades with Israel. The port of Dubai, Jebel Ali, is 11 times bigger than Haifa and Ashdod put together.
Crazy.
It's a huge hub.
Okay.
And a lot of the trade from the east goes first there, and to the Gulf, goes first there and then being fed to Israel, but also to the Gulf, to other Gulf states, from Kuwait in the north to Oman in the south. So that's one thing to remember, that a lot of the trade is transit trade. It trades that comes to Dubai and then continues to Israel. And again, that can grow. Bahrain can play a role. Alas, maybe limited, a very small port, smaller capacity, but still the shortest route from the Gulf to Israel goes through Bahrain, Tel Aviv, Bahrain, Haifa. I once remember checking it on Waze. How long will it take to drive? 20 hours and 9 minutes.
It's nothing.
It's not a lot.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I spoke to Israeli business people, importers, they said, look, importing stuff from Bahrain, and they do export aluminum, iron, steel, petrochemicals. It's like having it in Israel.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
It's very short.
And it would be driven in, or would it still come from the port?
Once Saudi is open, it can be driven in. It will take from Sunday to Wednesday or Thursday, and you have the goods in Haifa or Ashdod or Tel Aviv or Rehovot, wherever.
Amazing. I'm just going to remind you not to knock on the table because, the microphones in this room are so sensitive.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. We all do it. I talk with my hands as well, but it makes sense.
Can't talk without the hands.
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially us Jews and stuff. It's very hard. So let's talk a little bit about a message, that you might want to give to the Bahrainis. Even before that, I want to talk to you a bit about the culture. So you're an Israeli, you come to Bahrain. What was the same? What resonated with you as an Israeli, and what was different, good and bad, interesting and exciting, or challenging?
So I'll start with what you ended your question with. Coming to the Gulf was exciting, obviously. Following the signing of the Abraham Accords, it's all new, all exciting, and obviously I was very curious, with endless questions, looking around, learning. They always ask me, "What's your impression?" I said, "I'm still learning the questions." So that's certainly one thing that certainly was there. There was excitement, there was curiosity. People were curious to meet Israelis, to talk to Israelis. To hear whatever is happening from an Israeli firsthand, not through the papers, not through any of the channels, but to see an Israeli and to talk to an Israeli. Another thing of talking to Israelis is that people bring their own stories.
Right.
And people always relate easier to personal stories. So that's another thing that these conversations allow us to do, is to tell a story. And we have a story to tell.
And was there overlap in some of the stories? I mean, I think you have a background from your family's from Middle Eastern countries, right?
No, my country is actually European. My family is of European descent, but they came here in the mid-19th century.
So there's generations, Palestine, Israeli, whatever you want to call it.
Ottomans,
Ottomans, yes. So that's probably
Indeed.
very interesting for the people living in Bahrain to hear a story like that.
They were interested when you tell them about your family and you said, look, the conflict hasn't started in 48 or 67 or 23. It started a long time ago. I told to many people the story of my dad's cousin, an 8-year-old who was killed on a bus on the way from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in 1939, August. The last Jewish kid to be killed, or Jew at all, to be killed in then British Palestine before World War II. So what was the reason there? What was the excuse then? Settlements?
What was the excuse?
Gaza?
Religion?
67. We are talking about 1939. Even Netanyahu wasn't born there, the prime minister. So, people certainly see it in when you tell them your own story.
Yeah.
And not just talking points and bullets, but bullet point, but a real story. Google it, and you'll find the name and what happened. People are relating to it.
Yeah.
Easier.
And did you hear stories like that from them that resonated with you as well?
It was interesting to learn about the history of the Gulf, and the different tribes, how they all came together. How they fought with each other, the history, it's different when you look at it from the inside, because I learned Middle East history in university, but we looked at the Gulf, and we looked at the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, or we look at the Arab League. And when you're there and you see all the the nuances and the different shades and opinions, it's very interesting. It's actually fascinating.
I can imagine.
I love culture and I like their culture, and I felt it is. You asked me before what I liked.
Yeah.
I like the food. I like the hospitality, fabulous hospitality. I wish we could, return it back when they come here.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. In this country, if you could get served in a store, at a restaurant, that's a big deal here in Israel. But
we'll do our best.
Yes, that's for sure. So, tell me if you had to give a message to the Bahrainis. Here we are. You've come back. You're 2 weeks here, returning from the country, and you want to say to them something about what should be next and why this relationship can continue. What do you want the Bahrainis to hear? Let's start with that, and then when you're done, give a message to the Israelis about something that you picked up there that you think Israelis should really know.
Well, to the Bahrainis, I will say that those relations are important because eventually they bring more trade, they bring more prosperity, they bring more jobs, which is important, and that's what they're after, jobs for the younger generation. They bring more stability to the region. Because I believe that once we have a dialogue and once people understand each other better, understand why people act the way they act, people know what to be careful of. People know your sensitivities, you know their sensitivities, and we want normal relationships. So that's one thing. I think that they stand to benefit from the Israeli tech, be it medicine, and be it agrotech, be it high-tech, fintech. So that's one. For that, we need peace, and peace can come when security is secure. And, when Israel is secured, feels secured.
Yeah.
And of course, there are conditions to that, and people do need to understand those conditions. Peace is in order to achieve security and economic prosperity. The message for the Israelis is patience. It's a process. It will take years for people to get to know us, to take down the walls of suspicion of what they heard about Israel, what they learned in school about Israel, what they watch on TV.
Is it still like that in the school bus?
Of course, very much so. And these things take time. It's not okay. We've signed an accord. Let's hug and kiss each other. I first, as a diplomat, I really before the hugs and the kisses, I'm expecting appreciation, respect, to sit down together and to map interests, and to act upon what we think is important and prioritized, and go ahead with it. That's what makes countries work together, not necessarily. They love us or they don't love us. They learn to love you. They learn to respect you. That takes time.
Learn to respect you, for sure. So what do we need from Washington right now?
I think that American involvement is extremely important. I think that countries in the region are looking up at America, certainly where I was, certainly in Bahrain. The first accord or an agreement that Bahrain signed with the Western country was in 1816. It was Great Britain. The Americans are in the Gulf since the end of World War II. The Bahrainis supplied half of the fuel that was needed for the Allies fighting in the Middle East. El Alamein would not have been won without Bahraini oil. So the Gulf is important. It's important also to America, and America is very important to the Gulf and to the security and prosperity of the Gulf. And therefore, we need America to continue to stay involved. That's what will secure peace and give us security.
Nice. So, we're going to run out of time. We have about 2 minutes left. And I want to ask you this. If there was a moment or if there was a experience that you had in Bahrain that really is going to stick with you for the rest of your life, something that you'll tell your grandkids about, or share when you write your book about being the first ambassador to Bahrain. I just made that up, but you never know. What would it be?
Being a normal Israeli, grew up here, and to find myself in the Gulf was in itself an exciting experience. Going to the beach, meeting people. It's for me, what is really interesting in what we do is the people that we meet.
Yeah.
Places we can see, we can visit, museums we can go to, but it's the people, and what will stick with me are the friendships that we created and the people, those that were in touch with us and stuck with us, not without sometimes raising some questions, curiosity. Curious questions about how long is it going to last and so on. But they are good friends, and this is what I'm taking back from Bahrain: the friendships, the people, the hospitality, the warmth, the certain coolness about them. The quiet. In contrast to us Israelis, who are a bit stressed and need everything to happen yesterday.
Right.
From the Bahrain, and I said it to them because I quickly realized I learned patience.
Wow, you learned patience. That's what you brought back from Bahrain. I guess we'll have to test that over the next months. Well,
let's see how long it will last.
Right, exactly. Very nice. Well, Ambassador Nat, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
Hello, and welcome back to the ILTV podcast. I'm Ayan Hoffman, executive editor of ILTV, and we're so happy to be here with our viewers and our listeners. I have with me Ahmed Kuzai, a respected regional analyst and friend of the Coalition for Regional Security. We're going to discuss the shifting dynamics of the Middle East as Trump's proposed Gaza ceasefire and peace plan put Israel and its neighbors at a new historic crossroads. Welcome, Ahmed.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here with you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, we may be on the verge of ending the Gaza war. Tell me, most important question, does the region feel ready for that reality?
That's a tough question to ask. Gauging how the region feels is really complicated. We are hopeful that we are at the verge of siding or basically ending the never-ending wars and never-ending conflicts in the region. Yet, if we are being a bit realistic, we have to go and look at the previous patterns, especially when it comes to Israel dealing with Hamas. On the hopeful side, yes, Hamas did respond to President Trump saying that this is something we are willing to look into, but on the realistic and how can I put it? On the analytical side, that's not even a response. When you say a response, it means that you agree to something and you list the points you are agreeing to, which Hamas did already. And they said what they agreed to is the ceasefire, which is in their favor. They said they are willing to exchange prisoners and abductees, which is as well in their favor. Israel still have 48 civilians are basically waiting to come back, compared to 250 sentenced for life Palestinian prisoners, along with 1,700 basically captured ever since the war. So the numbers don't add up to Israel, they add up to Hamas. About the disarmament of Hamas, they didn't even mention that, which is exactly what Israel is looking for. So what's in it for Israel? And here I'm standing on the fence trying to analyze it for both ends. And I don't see it an appealing deal for Israel yet. We'll wait for Witkoff's beatings in Egypt, and maybe and hopefully something good will come out of that. But so far, it doesn't look good.
Right. And of course, Hamas said, yes, we'd be willing to release those hostages, but there's still no indication, as you said, of what other parts they agree to and whether or not this is a deal that will become viable. But let's pretend for a moment that the ceasefire and hostage deal does go through. What does the morning after then look like for the state of Israel? What does it look like for Gaza? And more importantly, for the wider Middle East? Trump was talking about a Middle East peace plan that starts with an end to the Gaza war.
The first morning or the day after, basically, personally and the region would like to see Gaza without Hamas. And that's not me talking. I'm talking about the moderates. I'm talking about the governments. I'm talking about the US, the West, and Israel, as well as the Palestinian Authority as well. They started already talking about that in their statements, and Mahmoud Abbas' last two statements was about that. That won't happen without disarming Hamas. That won't happen without the Gazans being enabled to have the benefit of basically choosing whoever represents them. If they re-choose Hamas willingly, that's something else. But it's still vague, as you just mentioned earlier. All the terms are vague in one way or another, and taking them forward is still vague as well, which is good if you are willing to negotiate.
Right. And bad if we have people who we can't necessarily negotiate with. And, the fact that it is so vague does, though, leave it open for some interpretation. One thing that we certainly know is that when you mentioned Mahmoud Abbas, that if there would be anybody to take over time, the goal, if you look at points 19 and 20, are to have some kind of reformed Palestinian authority that will eventually live alongside potentially some kind of two-state solution in peace and prosperity with the state of Israel. But what concrete steps would really have to happen for something like that to get all the way down to those final points to really come to fruition?
Well, in that case, the terms or basically the conditions have to be solidified, understanding what they are, if there are any deadlines basically attached to it. If these deadlines are not met, what measures or steps are going to be taken. Without that, there's no seriousness in any of that. Besides, we have to never neglect the fact that the PA did not have a grip on Gaza ever since 2006. Which would make it, I'm not going to say impossible, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but these are real hurdles that the PA will have to face today. Even when basically saying that or mentioning that, we'll have to be very optimistic, because are Hamas going to leave? Are they willing to do that? That's the first question that has to be answered.
If Hamas does not agree to disarm and to leave, then what should plan B be?
Well, the war will continue until the last person alive. I don't see any other thing, especially here I'm talking about how Israel look at things. And they continued the war for two reasons. One, we're talking about the Israeli citizens in captivity by Hamas. That's number one. Number two is Hamas still possess arms and they are still attacking. So if those two conditions are not met, tell me, why would Israel stop?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I'm wondering how Arab governments, I know that's one of your expertise, are interpreting Netanyahu's comments that the next phase will be either diplomatic or military. Do you think that they agree with that threat, that there can be a diplomatic or a military answer? At one point, the Arab League was saying, yes, Hamas must leave Gaza. We agree. Certainly, it seems like Arab support for this plan, but as you said, it's vague and it's unclear whether Hamas is going to agree to any diplomatic next steps.
Yeah. When we're talking about the rest of the Arabs, nobody wants war. Nobody wants to have a refugee crisis. Nobody wants to deal with any of the messy situations. At the same time, all Arabs believe Netanyahu when he talks about war. It's not something that anybody could even elaborate on. It's given that when Netanyahu says, if this does not work, we'll go to war, they do believe him. In order for us to go to the next step, yes, they see that in the past, we as Arabs, none of the Arabs have the right to speak on behalf of the Palestinians, and none of the Arabs have the right to speak on behalf of Gazans, which took us to where we are today. Arabs, of course, want to see an end to this conflict. How? If we don't have a say in it, if the Palestinians are the only rightful people who have a say in all of that, how can we make both ends meet? It's not an easy equation to achieve.
Right. I mean, but how can you also go to fair elections, as you mentioned before? I mean, even when you think about what's going on in the areas of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, the Palestinian territories over there, which is currently ruled by the Palestinian Authority. And Abbas, of course, has been in office way longer than any leader should be. And there have not been viable elections for almost 20 years or something close to that effect. If we went to elections today, from all the polls that we see coming out of the West Bank itself, polling Palestinians being polled by Palestinians, we see that the majority of Palestinians are actually still supportive of Hamas. And certainly in that area, we also know that they think very ill of their own leadership and are not interested in seeing that leadership continue. I assume that things aren't so different in the Gaza Strip. So how do you hold elections? Wouldn't this peace board anyway be a more viable solution for, who knows, maybe even a decade?
I don't have an answer to that, but I have an elaborative question to that. Even let's say we are on the positive side and things went well in Gaza. How would the PA control Gaza while it's somehow isolated from the West Bank?
Exactly.
It did not happen before. And how can you call it one country if it has like two parts of it? It's not an easy thing to handle at best case scenario, let alone everything that the region is going through, everything that both West Bank and Gaza are going through. So if we have questions that have no answers to it, Now we'll go back to the numbers. If I'm not going to say the majority, but a big chunk of the Palestinians in the West Bank are in support of Hamas, while they are ruled by the PA, these are even going to complicate things even further. And to complicate it even furthermore, and I'm sorry about that, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but how would Israel even respond to that? They are responding to it in Gaza. Are they going to do the same in the West Bank, especially with the less than a month ago, Netanyahu started talking about the annexation of the West Bank. So these are only complicating things as we know it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems very far off, and I don't want to sound pessimistic either, but in the interviews and work that I've been doing, I've certainly been hearing that the chance of being able to see all 20 of those points come to fruition are all pretty slim to none, and that the plan, unless redefined or made much less vague, is likely to fail. So I think there is a very big excitement around the plan, as you said, and there's a lot of optimism to be had on the one hand, and on the other hand, this negotiating table, as we need it to be, maybe doesn't really exist. Now, Ahmed, you are an expert also in the Abraham Accords, and it's been 5 years since another thing we never thought was likely